Bro's life was straight up cooked, lost his job, flat broke. Then a random ring showed up and said, "Congrats, you're broke in another world now." It yeeted him into a zombie apocalypse, where people had tech that made ours look prehistoric, super soldier serums, weapons that shouldn't even exist, tech straight out of a sci-fi movie, but real food that was basically extinct. A bag of chips would have started a riot. A bucket of KFC, people would have sold their souls for a bite. Gold, worth less than the wrapper it came in. That's when our guy found the biggest loophole in human history. He turned the apocalypse into his side hustle. One world supplied him with unlimited food, the other paid him in gold and futuristic tech. He wasn't surviving the apocalypse, he was farming it. So, the whole madness kicks off with this low, guttural rumble that shakes the air. Out of absolutely nowhere in this barren wasteland, Siang comes sprinting, hollering at the top of his lungs that this is bad and he's totally dead. A swarm of zombies is right on his heels, and the guy is literally shrieking for his life. Then one of those rotting nightmares lunges at him with a ghastly growl, and Siang, defying all logic, pulls off a flawless knee slide while screaming something about a side tackle. He watches the zombie soar past and blurts out his disbelief that this thing apparently knows how to set up an ambush, before he's back to running in pure desperation, whining that he just got dropped into this world and asking if he's going to die immediately. But then his eyes lock onto buildings and actual civilization up ahead, and he notices what looks like cooking smoke rising into the sky. A gleaming white smile spreads across his face as he tells himself that it's a human settlement and he just has to make it there. He bolts even faster, but then his foot clips a tiny rock and he knows right away that he's messed up. He goes down hard, wailing and crying out in despair as he starts rolling like a runaway tire, shouting the whole time until he finally stops face first in the sand with a pitiful groan. A zombie appears right above him, its jaws stretched impossibly wide, and Siang screeches that he swears he'll never randomly isekai again, tears streaming down his face. Just then, a gun materializes out of the void and fires a salvo of straight bullets directly into the horde closing in on him. One round pierces the lunging zombie's skull clean through from front to back, and the creature collapses onto Siang in a foul cuddle that has him utterly disgusted and stammering about what the hell is going on. The shooter coolly reloads and pops 2 more zombies with surgical precision, and by the 3rd shot, all 4 of them are down for good. Siang manages to sit up with the dead zombie still draped over him, murmuring that he's saved, only for the gun-toting girl to instantly snap at him to pay attention. She steps closer and demands to know how long he plans to keep hugging that thing, and Siang's eyes dart between her and the corpse before he freaks out, screaming for it not to touch him as he shoves it away. He looks at the girl and tries to offer a grateful thank you, but in response she shoves the barrel straight at him and orders him not to move and to give his name. Siang somehow wobbles to his feet, raises his hands and replies that his name is Siang. She then fires off a question about why he suddenly materialized near their camp, and Siang, trying to talk his way out, asks if she'd believe he simply got lost and wandered over. She counters that she definitely just heard him saying something about traveling between worlds, and Siang's brain goes into complete meltdown, thinking that if he tells the truth, she'll think he's insane. Instead of pressing, she coldly notes that his silence means he must not want to live, but then her nose catches something and she pauses, exclaiming that whatever she smells is absolutely delicious. She instantly aims the gun at Siang's bag and shrieks out a demand to know what's in his pocket, and Siang fishes out the item, a little relieved, asking if she means that. He explains that he was just about to eat a packet of spicy strips when zombies ambushed him, so he stuffed it in his pocket. She eyes him, sweat beading on his forehead, and asks in disbelief if he's claiming that stuff is food. Siang confirms that it is, and he waves the spicy strips to tease her in the air while asking if she wants to try some. She stares at the weirdly colored packet, her mind flashing warnings that it might be poisonous, but the smell overpowers her logic since she hasn't eaten in 2 days. With a clueless shrug, she snatches it from him, deciding she'll eat first and deal with the consequences later, then tears it open and takes a bite. The moment the flavor hits her tongue, she ascends straight to heaven, moaning about how insanely good it is and describing the divine mix of flour, oil, and seasonings. Siang clenches his jaw and fists, thinking smugly that this is exactly the reaction food should get in a post-apocalyptic wasteland where nobody can refuse a meal. His mind drifts back to his old life, remembering how he used to be a totally forgettable corporate drone, indistinguishable from every other salaryman. He recalls getting abruptly fired a few days ago, losing his only source of income, and packing his belongings to move out of the company. By sheer accident, he discovered a bizarre ring tucked inside a box of snacks he'd bought online, and the second he slipped it on, reality glitched and spat him out in this post-apocalyptic hellscape. When he looked around in shock, a corpse-like rat the size of a small dog stared back at him, and he blurted out his confusion about the monstrous rodent and his location. The rat charged, and Siang shrieked in panic, commanding himself to go home immediately, which triggered reality to collapse again and dumped him right back in his apartment. He thought he'd made it back, then examined the ring and realized it somehow let him travel freely between the real world and the apocalyptic one. Drawing on years of motion comic wisdom, he deduced that food would be hard currency in the apocalypse, more valuable than gold. He imagined a future surrounded by pretty girls and cackled out loud, convinced he could ride this trick straight to the top of life. Snapping back to the present, Xiang watches the girl polish off the entire packet, and then she hesitates, admitting she finished it and feeling sorry because it was just too delicious to stop. Xiang waves it off casually, then pats his chest and declares that the organization he belongs to doesn't lack food but needs many other things, which is why he was sent out to trade for supplies. She asks in disbelief if there's genuinely an organization in this world that isn't short on food, and Xiang grins, telling her she's looking at one right now. She gets flustered and immediately asks if he can hire her, promising she knows the area extremely well. Blushing, she adds that whatever he wants to trade food for, she can help him find it, and her commission would only be 15 packs a month of those spicy strips. Xiang's face twists into a calculating hunch as he says it's not impossible, but he doesn't know anything about her. She points at herself and asks what he wants to know, so Xiang demands her name first, and she replies that it's Lilu. He then asks what her gender is, which makes her pop out her massive chest and freak out, demanding if he can't see for himself. Xiang moves on to ask her age, and when she says 19, he circles her, muttering that for someone surviving the apocalypse, she looks a bit too well fed, and questioning if she really calls that 19. He wrestles his composure back into place, while still gawking at her outrageously huge melons and ass, then finally says that since she's such a big help, he'll hire her with a monthly salary of 15 packs of spicy strips. Lilu takes a second to process it, then cheers in pure joy, shouting her thanks and calling him boss. Xiang casually mentions that it never crossed her mind to just kill him and steal his food, and she proudly answers that she's not stupid enough to trade one full meal for a lifetime of full bellies. She points toward the camp and tells him to follow her there, and Xiang waves his fingers playfully, telling her to lead the way. Boss. Lilu drags Xiang to her so-called base, points around like a real estate agent on crack, and announces that this glorious dump is their camp, Grey Rat District D. Xiang stares at her like she just suggested moving into a landfill, his brain short-circuiting because, seriously, a camp? This makes a slum look like a 5-star resort. He slaps on the fakest smile in human history, and decides that since he's already screwed, he might as well settle in and sniff out something valuable first. Lilu struts ahead with a sniper rifle swinging in her grip, while Xiang trails behind, and every single pair of eyes around them fixes on him with this unsettling, horror movie stare. She spins around and explains that as an outsider, it's totally normal for everyone to be creepily suspicious of him. While he absorbs that little nugget of paranoia, she points forward and tells him this is her spot. Come in and rest for a bit. Xiang's brain instantly sprouts cartoon flowers because he's thinking, a pretty girl's home. How can he not get a little excited? Those massive gates groan open and the inside absolutely annihilates every last shred of hope he had left. He chokes out that her lifestyle is impressively simple, making a gagging face, while she deadpans that he should have a seat first. Xiang sinks onto the bed in total silence as she pours water into a cup and tells him not to look down on Grey Rat District D just because it's a tiny camp. She hands him the water and drops this poetic gem about how even a small sparrow has all its organs. Then she pats her balloon, plants her other hand on her thigh, and tells him to just name what he wants to trade for, guaranteeing she'll find it if the camp has it. And Xiang's eyes start glittering with greed. He snaps his fingers instantly and declares he needs gold and silver, asking if she even knows what those are. She looks beyond confused and demands to know why he wants that absolute trash. Xiang gets mentally struck by lightning, thinking that kind of trash goes for 800 a gram where he comes from, while she settles into a relaxed pose and explains that before the Great Cataclysm, they were pretty valuable. She slides into full teacher mode and lectures him that you can't eat gold, and now they only do barter tricks. Xiang fires back that this is their first deal, and what really matters isn't what they trade but building mutual trust and paving the way for future business. He unzips his bag in one swift motion and spreads it wide, exposing the kind of delicious luxury that would make a post-apocalyptic survivor weep. Lilu instantly lights up, a furious blush spreading across her face, and an involuntary little woe slips out. Xiang promises that if this works out, 1/10 of the food in that bag becomes her cart, and that's on top of her commission. She creeps closer but doesn't dare touch the bag yet, repeating 1/10 like it's a holy prayer. She finally grabs the bag and argues that even if it's for trust, trading precious food for totally useless gold is an enormous, brain-melting loss. Xiang just shoves the bag into her hands and tells her to do exactly as he says. She's kneeling in front of him as he stands up and declares he's leaving everything to her. He'll wait right here for her to come back. She clenches her fists, replies that she got it, boss, and swears she won't betray his trust. She snatches the bag, hoists her sniper, and bolts for the door, promising to return as fast as humanly possible. Watching her vanish, Xiang's brain screams that that bag of snacks cost him his last 100 yuan. This deal absolutely has to go through. He flops onto the bed, groaning internally about no internet, no signal, terminally bored out of his skull. Casually glancing at the cutouts plastered on the wall, he mumbles that it's a newspaper, then jolts upright and starts scanning the clippings. He reads that it's the year 2235, Common Era. Then the great cataclysm slams into his consciousness like a nuclear fist to the face. He devours the details about gene pollution and zombies roaming everywhere, the full apocalyptic buffet. 1 hour later, after his brain finishes processing the nightmare, he's deeply surprised and whispers to himself that this is Blue Star 200 years in the future. He pieces together that what Lilu called the Great Cataclysm was actually a nuclear war, and his mind paints a picture of tens of thousands of nukes wiping out half the population. He further realizes those same bombs permanently butchered the planet's entire ecosystem, turning it into the irradiated wasteland it is now. Finally, the epiphany punches him square in the face. He didn't cross space, he crossed time. Right at that exact moment, the rusted iron doors screech open and Lilu marches in, announcing she's back and practically glowing with happiness. She drops the bag at his feet and explains there isn't much gold and silver in the camp. This is pretty much all of it, because it's so utterly worthless nobody even bothers to collect it. Xiang throws her a confused look, then pries that bag open. It's crammed full of solid gold bars. Fucking batshit insane. He smiles like a complete psychopath, babbling about how shiny it all is, and absolutely loses his goddamn mind. Xiang freaked out completely, pulling a gritty face and muttering that it was so shiny. He grabbed a gold bar and started doodling on it while cackling, then declared that if this wasteland hadn't birthed him, Xiang the Eternal Night would never end. Lilu finally looked at Xiang and pointed out that the food was worth way more than all that gold and silver, so she'd taken the liberty. Then, striking a ridiculously sexy pose, she handed him a potion and explained that she'd traded it for a Tier 1 enhancement potion, the lowest grade but with high purity, directly injectable and risk-free, straight-up sci-fi shit. Lilu then got dead serious, telling Xiang he was clearly just an ordinary guy, not enhanced at all. She said once he used it, handling a few low-level zombies would be no problem. Xiang immediately pictured himself kicking, punching, and choking the undead while Lilu handed over the potion, adding that danger lurked everywhere and he couldn't rely on luck forever. Xiang zipped up his bag and boasted that their organization was actually pretty powerful, so travel was basically safe, and only the trading part was a hassle. But still, thanks. He made sure not to leak any lack of confidence, slipped the gene potion into the bag, zipped it tight, and declared that their first trade went great, so he'd head back for now. Standing up, he promised to come back tomorrow and sort out her monthly salary first thing, then said he was off and left. Lilu remarked that he could travel the wasteland alone without any danger. He was clearly bursting with secrets. As he left, she muttered to herself that in this wasteland, who didn't have secrets, then instantly tore open the pack of spicy strips with gleaming, pleased eyes. She grabbed one and decided that as long as he kept the food coming, that was all that mattered, and then she freaked out, screaming that it was so damn tasty. Leaving that place, Xiang figured this spot was about right with nobody around. He glanced around, then raised his hand, and reality straight up glitched in front of him. With a smirk, he whooshed right into his room. He opened his bags, eager to check, and as he peered inside, he burst out laughing, pulling out a gold bar and confirming the gold was still there, that he wasn't dreaming. Overjoyed, he stared at the bar and mused that if he could take it to a good gold shop and exchange it for cash, he'd be filthy rich. Then his imagination went wild. He, Xiang, was about to skyrocket to the peak of life, with sexy women pouring him wine while he threw cash everywhere. Xiang adjusted the gold bricks and told himself he'd need to control how much he exchanged at once, or people would freak out. He took out a portion, stashed the rest of the bag, and finally admitted there was no way to explain where this gold came from. Relieved, he sat down, eyes on the gene potion, and then picked it up, wondering aloud if he should use this enhancement potion or not. Gripping it tight, he thought that Lilu had a point. His body was pathetically weak in the apocalypse, couldn't even beat a regular zombie. He reasoned that to survive the wasteland, he had to strengthen himself first, but then he cursed the potion for having no instructions, calling it terrible user experience. Confused, he just placed one end against his hand and muttered whatever, he'd go for it. The enhancement potion immediately deployed a needle, piercing his arm and pumping all that liquid straight into his body. Once it was empty, Xiang pulled it out and thought he didn't feel any different, until his heart suddenly seized up, gathering all that potion and hammering insanely fast. Xiang crushed the empty potion tube instantly and grabbed his chest, dropping to his hands and knees like he was about to die. All he could process was that it hurt so much, trembling and shivering, convinced every muscle was being ripped apart. Something built up in his chest with zero relief, pain hammering non-stop, until suddenly his entire body swelled into insane muscularity in a heartbeat. Using the table, he barely stood up, and the once skinny bastard now rocked 8-pack abs and a physique that would make any woman thirst. He glanced around, shivering, and asked himself if it was finally over. Then he staggered to the mirror, stared in disbelief, questioning if this was really his body, then hit a double bicep pose and bragged that these muscles could rival Arnold's. noting his head hadn't gotten pointy. Just as expected from waist-length tech, the effect was insanely strong. He then pondered that Lilu had said this was just the lowest tier. So would a higher one turn him into a one-punch man like a rocket? Right then, a pounding on the door snapped him out of it, someone calling for Siang to help open the door. Siang hollered that he was coming, opened the door, and found a girl standing there, Shuya, a D-list actress and his flatmate. She was removing her heels, apologizing for forgetting her key, while Siang brushed it off, saying no need for politeness since they were roommates. The moment she looked up at him, her face flushed with pure embarrassment in a split second. I mean, that freaking muscular body was beyond insane. Shuya's brain probably did a full factory reset. Shuya suddenly started flashing this lovesick smile and cracking up while she gazes at Siang like he's a damn meal. Siang's waving a hand in her face, asking what the hell is wrong because she's glowing redder than a stoplight. She reaches out and starts fondling his chest, then casually drops that she never realized he's absolutely shredded under there. Apparently she bombed an audition and came over to get cheered up, but Siang's turning crimson as her hands wander and then his brain finally catches up. Without warning, Siang shrieks in absolute horror and bolts like a startled gazelle. Shuya just stands there, jaw unhinged, while he hollers back that he forgot to wear actual clothes and he's been strutting around in his underwear the whole time. He slams the gate shut, mortified, praying Shuya doesn't permanently brand him as creep of the century. After a deep breath, he mutters to himself that there's no point spiraling. The real mission is offloading those gold bars, and there they are, glinting right at him. Once he's finally decent, he slings a bag full of gold over his shoulder and hits the street. Walking along, he suddenly notices the weight on his shoulders feels non-existent, and his eyes lock onto a tiny signboard that practically glows like a neon beacon. He deciphers a sign screaming about 12% off all fresh produce this weekend from a distance so insane it should be illegal. The guy realizes he can now read text from hundreds of meters away, and that's not even the wildest part. His ears perk up as he tunes into two gossiping hens behind him. One's dishing that old Lee's wife is having an affair, the other gasps, and Siang silently congratulates himself on his supersonic hearing upgrade being blatantly obvious. He clenches his fist and grins like a maniac, marveling that this enhancement serum delivers a full-body glow-up for his senses. Then his brain does a time jump to the future nuclear apocalypse, realizing that even wasteland tech is still 2 centuries ahead of the current era, and the serum's true potential is begging to be explored. Now he's planted in front of Lin's gold shop, thinking that big chain jewelry stores would probably turn their nose up at mystery gold, so an independent joint is the smarter bet. He strolls inside and a receptionist greets him with the usual fake pleasantries. Siang asks if the boss is in because he's got a deal to discuss. She immediately shuts him down with that tired "just tell me what you need" line, so my man calmly plonks his bag on the table and slides out a few gold bars. He tells her this is way above her pay grade, and she just stares at the gold like it's a divine apparition. Her brain short-circuits, and Siang asks her what she has to say now, prompting her to numbly gesture for him to follow her into the back. Inside the meeting room, the owner, a proper fat bastard, introduces himself as Lin Tao and asks how to address our golden boy. They shake hands, he oozes some fake charm, and Siang just says his last name is Siang, leaving it at that. Tao ushers him to sit like he's royalty. Without wasting a single breath, Siang slaps 3 gold bars directly in front of the guy. No chit-chat, no backstory. Tao eyes the bars and confirms Siang's looking to sell, which gets a deadpan nod and a simple yes. The owner plucks one up, explaining he'll need to verify purity with fancy equipment for such a big transaction, hoping Siang doesn't mind. Siang waves him off like he's swatting a fly, telling him to go nuts while a cup of coffee gets placed in front of him. Internally, he's cackling because gold and silver are worthless in the wasteland, and no post-apocalyptic soul would bother counterfeiting the stuff. The tester whirs, and the purity pops up at 99.9%. The owner's eyes nearly pop out, so he frantically checks the other 2 bars, only to get the exact same flawless result. His mind is blown. They're all solid 24 karat, and his greedy little brain starts doing cartwheels. Siang flatly asks for the results, and the owner composes himself just enough to announce the quality is excellent, and he's offering 400 yuan per gram. The moment that number hits the air, Siang's coffee glass starts cracking under his grip. He's running the math in his head. 400 per gram, 1,000 grams per bar equals 400,000, times 3 bars means a cool 1.2 million. His brain short-circuits as he envisions himself literally drowning in a sea of cash, bills swirling around him like a money tornado. Tao finally cuts the chit-chat, points a finger straight at Siang, and drops the inevitable bureaucratic hammer about needing official purchase receipts. Siang, mid-sip of his coffee, does a spectacular spit take all over the table, and confesses he doesn't have a single scrap of paper, but tells the man to chill out because the source is cleaner than a holy man's search history. Tao just fires back this greasy, knowing smirk, reminding him that talk is ridiculously cheap and absorbing a stash that hot on a whim is a one-way ticket to gargantuan Risk City. Seong slams his cup down like a judge's gavel, declares himself a no-bull kind of guy who's skipping the theatrical haggling ceremony, and launches himself out of the chair. He closes the physical gap between them with pure alpha energy, telling Tao to cut to the chase with a final number so they can either shake hands or just chalk it up to making a new friend, and then he straight up yoinks the gold bar right out of Tao's sweaty fingers. Tao, now visibly leaking desperation from every pore, crumbles instantly and agrees to suffer a massive financial loss by recycling at 280 a gram for a gut-punching total of 840,000. Seong purrs back that the number is finally sounding like actual music, and just like that, his phone pings with a bank alert screaming that a cool 840,000 yuan from Tao has just hit the account. He slides the gold bars across the table like a poker player pushing all in, declaring the cash is in the den and real business is officially happening, which makes Tao jump to his feet for a hearty handshake. Tao starts pitching a long-term partnership for moving future goods, but Seong just mutters he'll think about it as he struts out, his brain already doing the ecstatic math that just 3 tiny bars netted him over 800 grand. His mind then wanders to the glorious weight of his backpack, and he realizes that liquidating the whole stash will instantly crown him as the richest man to ever survive an apocalypse. The scene then smash cuts to his apartment complex, where we find a girl named Dan, an office drone and Siang's flatmate, frantically patting down every cushion while demanding to know the location of her phone. Her friend casually points out the obvious spot on the coffee table, and the very millisecond Dan spins around with the phone in hand, Siang materializes like a magic trick and hits her with a laid-back greeting. He asks her where she's storming off to in such a chaotic frenzy, and another girl, Xiaoya, pops up to explain that Dan just walked in the door only for her demon boss to summon her back for soul-crushing overtime. Siang, with the casualness of a god, lifts his hand to display his newfound wealth and announces the tragic irony that he just made a small fortune and was planning to treat them both to dinner. Dan immediately screams a profanity, instinctively orders Xiaoya to stay behind and eat her portion too, and the friend replies with a crisp salute and a thumbs up, effectively accepting the culinary mission. Dan then locks eyes with Siang and issues a dead serious warning not to make any moves on her friend while she's gone, which makes Siang ask, with mock offense, if his face really gives off those specific scumbag vibes. She just waves them off with a breezy command to have fun and bolts out the door, leaving Xiaoya to turn to Siang with a sly smile, addressing him as President Chen and asking where the evening feast is going down. Siang casually suggests the Regal Grand Hotel, which makes her choke on air and accuse him of joking because that's a 5-star temple of luxury he just name-dropped. He hits her with a devastating smirk, confirms he's absolutely not joking, and then vanishes into his room with the mic-drop promise of seeing her tonight. Once inside his lair, he rips up his bedsheet like a madman, pulls out a dozen more gleaming gold bars from the bag, and mutters to himself that he needs to speedrun cashing out this entire glittering inventory today. The hustler then meets another gold shop guy and does a deal so pleasurable it should be illegal, immediately followed by a lady running a different shop who also has a very, very good business transaction with him. The montage of fiscal domination continues with another shop until Siang finally checks his bank balance and sees a number so monstrous, overjoyed to the point of delirium, he bursts out of the shop, stretches his arms to the heavens like a messiah, and internally screams that a full 4 million yuan means long live the glorious apocalypse. But just as the endorphins peak, his phone detonates with a call from his buddy Guangzi, which makes Siang wonder out loud why the hell this dude is calling him out of the blue, and if he misses him already. His friend, however, is audibly choking up while glued to his computer, and he confronts Siang for hiding the fact that he lost his job, immediately asking if he can even afford rent anymore. Guangzi offers up his own pathetic savings, insisting Siang use it first, which makes our boy freeze like a statue in the middle of a random road. Siang stands there in stunned silence for a moment before replying that his bro shouldn't worry because he is definitely not short on cash right now, but then his brain catches up and he completely freaks out. He starts shouting in a panic, demanding to know who the snitch is that spread the news of his unemployment so far and wide, because apparently he's the star of the local gossip circuit. Guangzi stammers and finally reveals that the source is actually Siang's ex, Feng Jia, who apparently thought it was inappropriate to reach out herself and deputized him to play the charity case intervention instead. Siang's mind goes completely blank for a second as he stands there, utterly consumed by the confusing, heavy thought of his ex-girlfriend pulling strings from the shadows. So Guangxi leans back in his chair and drops on Siang that he has a feeling Fengjia still cares, then asks why the hell they even broke up. Siang pulls a face like a depressed donkey and reveals that her mom demanded a boyfriend who could buy a house in Jean, as if his family situation wasn't already a punchline. Guangxi sits up and declares that this whole mess just pumps his determination to stay single to unshakable levels. Xiang suddenly wonders how Fengjia even got wind of his life, since he ghosted her completely after the breakup. Guangxi spills that it was that rich brat Zhang Jinglong who ran his mouth to her, because that guy has always had a slimy thing for Fengjia. Then my boy leans into the phone and whispers the real nuclear bomb. Apparently, Zhang Jinglong bought shares in Xiang's old company and specifically named him to get him fired, just to stab him where it hurts most. Xiang erupts like a volcano, jumps into some kind of wild Shaolin fighting stance, and hisses that everything finally makes sense. He straightens up, his whole body crackling with fury. Guangxi casually stands up and begs him to chill the hell out and not pull any stupid moves. Xiang clenches his fist and fires back, asking if Guangxi seriously thinks he's the kind of guy who would do something stupid. Guangxi says he'll hang up for now, and Xiang kills the call with a terse okay. Then he tenses every single muscle and growls that Jinglong is utterly, revoltingly shameless. He glances ahead, realizes with a jolt that it's getting late and he needs to haul ass to the hotel. He breaks into a full sprint. A little while later, he's standing right in front of the hotel, scanning the area and muttering that Shuya told him she'd be there soon, so where the hell is she? Right then a car screeches its tires to a dead halt right in front of him, and a girl steps out apologizing for keeping Xiang waiting. It's Shuya. Everyone around practically drowns in her presence, whispering if she's some kind of celebrity, while another dude just blurts out that she's absolutely gorgeous. Shuya strolls up to Xiang and snaps him out of his daze, asking what he's zoning out for. Xiang goes crimson and confesses that in 3 whole months of sharing an apartment, he never once clocked she was that stunning. She casually flips her hair with a cute little act and points out that since he's treating her to such a swanky place, she can't let him lose face, and asks if she's making him look good. Then she grabs his hand, pulls him dangerously close, and says they should head inside while he's stammering what the actual hell she's doing. She breezily answers that it's just basic social etiquette, and wonders why he's so damn nervous. Eventually, they settle at a table. Xiang hands over the menu and tells her to order whatever she wants. Shuya takes it with a polite thank you, scans the dishes, and her brain screams that the prices are absolutely insane. Xiang then casually declares they'll have all 3 signature dishes and 2 treasure crabs, and the waiter scoops up the menu with a nod. Shuya shoots out of her seat, marches right up to Xiang, and leans in nervously to hiss that those 2 treasure crabs alone cost 1,000 yuan. Why the hell is he ordering something that expensive? Xiang looks away all smooth and assures her he's pretty flush right now, and can at least spring for a couple of crabs. Shuya crosses her arms, stands upright, and scoffs that he's been surviving on cheap takeout every single day, so he can cut the fake rich boy act. Xiang lifts his hands in casual surrender and drops the bomb that his family back home just scored a demolition payout. Shuya instantly lunges closer, grabs him by the neck, and chirps that now everything makes sense. She'll feel exactly 0 guilt, calling it robbing the rich to feed the poor. Xiang just coughs at her sudden proximity, completely caught off guard. After they demolish the meal, Xiang and Shuya stroll out of the hotel hand in hand, Xiang suggesting they find another spot for round 2 later. She agrees it was heavenly, but immediately begs off, saying she's absolutely stuffed. Right then, an utterly irritating presence oozes out from inside, none other than Jinglong, his shirt obnoxiously wide open, demanding to know what Xiang is doing there. Xiang spins around, locks eyes with him, and remarks what a wild coincidence it is that in a city as huge as Jin, just grabbing a meal still lands him face to face with that douchebag. Jinglong, wearing that signature shit-eating grin, sneers that eating at a 5-star hotel is way above Xiang's pay grade. Xiang fires back, asking if the Regal Grand now belongs to his damn family too, and if Jinglong is planning to toss him out of there as well. Jinglong shoots back that at least Xiang now knows exactly why he got fired. Shuya slides up to Xiang and quietly asks if this clown is supposed to be a friend of his. Meanwhile, Jinglong's eyes lock onto Shuya, his brain short-circuiting over what a stunning chick she is, his tongue practically wagging like a thirsty dog. He immediately schemes that Xiang is obviously there to pick up girls, and it's the perfect chance to expose him as a broke loser right in front of her, and if possible, snatch the girl for himself. What a malicious planning bitch. Jinglong, that smug little weasel, walks right up to Xiang and Shuya, and immediately tells the lady not to let Xiang fool her. With a greasy smile, he announces that he's his college classmate, so he knows all his dirty secrets, like how his bro recently got fired and can barely scrape together rent. He goes on to claim that Xiang bringing her to a swanky spot like this is probably him blowing his entire life savings just to play big shot, and that he'll use this to deceive her and then con her out of everything she's got. Xiang, fuming, shoots back asking if he thinks everyone is as despicable as him. Meanwhile, Shuya gives him this look and sarcastically asks if he's reminding her out of the goodness of his heart. Jinglong then makes this pathetic puppy face, swearing that's exactly it. He's Jinglong and he just can't stand seeing a beautiful woman get deceived. And then, with a damn rose in his mouth, like a cheesy magician, he mentions his company is looking for a brand ambassador and wonders if she'd be interested, flashing a business card at her. She lifts her hand and casually slaps that card right out of his grip, telling him too bad, she's not interested. But this guy doesn't quit. He keeps yapping about how excellent the benefits and compensation are, urging her to reconsider. Shuya just snuggles even closer to Seong and states that there's no need. She's his girlfriend and she doesn't appreciate him bad-mouthing her boyfriend, adding that with a chairman like him, the company is bound to go bankrupt sooner or later. Jinglong points at them, absolutely sputtering, just getting out a choked "you," before Seong grins and calls her quite the actress as they start walking away. She flips back that she is an actress after all, and tells Seong to come along, darling, they shouldn't waste time on trash. Jinglong, now frothing with rage, clenches his fist and mutters that she's a stupid bitch who must be blind to choose him. He then snarls that Seong is a piece of shit and to just you wait. Right then, from inside, a girl's voice calls out Jinglong's name, asking if he can take her home now, and guess who? It's Seong's ex-girlfriend, Feng Jia. Jinglong instantly smooths over his fury like a psycho flipping a switch, turning to her and telling her not to be in such a hurry and that he's booked a table at the bar so they should go have a few more drinks. Feng Jia flatly replies with a hard no, that she's not interested. Jinglong just looks at her all confused while she casually says she'll transfer him the money for tonight's dinner. Then, as she's waiting for her car, Jinglong walks toward her calling out a name, but she instantly hops in, slaps the door shut, and the car takes off. Jinglong is left standing there, speechless, and then he completely loses it again, screaming that every single one of them thinks they can put on airs in front of him now. Up on a quiet bridge under the night sky, Seong and Shuya keep walking. She remarks that the guy earlier was so annoying, and Seong just casually grunts in agreement. But then he drops that thanks to running into Jinglong, he's actually figured something out. She asks what he's figured out, and he tells her that after suddenly coming into money, he'd been wondering what industry to build a career in. He raises his fist high and declares that now he's decided he's going to start a gaming company too, and completely crush Jinglong. She's shocked, warning him that starting a company is super risky and he needs to think it through, not act on impulse. Seong, cool as hell, just tells her not to worry and to sit back and watch. Later, back at his residential complex, he's in the bath mulling over the fact that exchanging wasteland stuff for gold might not raise flags at first, but as his wealth grows, it'll definitely attract attention and even investigations. He strolls out in nothing but a towel, realizing he needs to legitimize his income in this world and get a proper business. He yanks out his chair and plops down at his desktop, thinking that besides all kinds of resources, the wasteland's biggest advantage is its technology. And then he muses that according to Li Lu, it's only been 10 years since the Great Cataclysm, so technological knowledge shouldn't be completely lost yet. If he looks carefully, he'll definitely find plenty of experts in various fields. So Seong's on this phone call, and the disembodied voice on the other end drones out that his registration request has been submitted, and he'll get a text when it's approved. He cracks this sly little grin, tosses out a casual thanks, and kills the call, his mind already spinning. With the company registration nonsense pawned off on some agency, he figures the only thing left to obsess over is the employees. He mutters to himself that he needs to haul ass, grab some food, and then dive right back into that godforsaken wasteland. But then mid-stride in the grocery aisle with his cart, a paranoid brainwave slaps him silly. He remembers that the wasteland is 200 years in the damn future, so maybe parading snacks with a visible production date is a monumentally stupid idea. If some perceptive jackass notices, it'll just be another throbbing headache he doesn't need. He snatches up a bag of potato chips, glares at it, then violently swerves his cart and lands thunderously at the counter. The lady behind the register leans in and asks what she can get for a handsome devil like him. Seong jabs a finger at the meat display and demands she weigh out 50 pounds of pork, dead serious. The girl's brain short-circuits, and she shrieks in utter disbelief, echoing the words 50 pounds like he just asked for a live unicorn. A half hour later, he surveys his glorious mountain of gluttony and thinks that should be just about enough to get the job done. He glances down at his cart, which now holds 20 pounds of potatoes, 20 pounds of corn, and 20 heads of Napa cabbage crammed together like a farmer's market fever dream. He practically throws his back out picking up that ridiculous tower of boxes when he gets home, grunting that it's heavy as sin, and dropping it to the floor. He stares at the pile and admits that even though the weight feels like nothing thanks to his enhanced physique, hauling this crap back and forth is an absolute pain in the ass. He wipes a streak of sweat off his forehead and tells himself it's fine for now, while the stash is small. But then his brain latches onto the nightmare logistics of feeding dozens or hundreds of people once the company launches, and he nearly spirals. Suddenly his ring starts glowing like a radioactive disco ball, and Seong just stands there sweaty and confused as hell, A beam of light shoots from the ring, hits the stack of boxes, and the whole damn pile vanishes into thin air right in front of him. He completely loses his cool, hollering in frustration, then his eyes lock onto the ring and a wild thought creeps in. He squeezes his eyes shut, and deep inside the ring he senses it, a full-blown storage space where all those boxes are now neatly tucked away. Seong freaks out all over again, screaming internally that it's really inside the ring, the adrenaline pumping. He instantly shouts a command, thrusts his hand forward, and a box materializes out of a burst of light like a magic trick from hell. Then he pictures the word store in his mind, and the box instantly teleports right back into the ring with a silent snap. A gritty, wolfish grin spreads across his face as he realizes the ring doesn't just have the ability to punt him into the wasteland. He kisses the damn ring, thrusts it forward, and declares that it's exactly what he needs. Its service absolutely god-tier and impossible. He roars out a battle cry for the wasteland, raises his hand high, and reality itself glitches as he gets ripped into that apocalyptic hellscape. He stands there, centers himself, and summons one of the boxes right in front of his feet, staring at it intently. He thinks better of showing off this storage ability to anyone else just yet, knowing it'll raise too many eyebrows. To dodge suspicion, he decides he'll still lug these things around by hand when he goes hunting for Lilu. Meanwhile, Lilu, in that miserable, shit-stained apocalypse world, is having the absolute time of her life devouring the 4-ply snack stack Seong left her. She's squeezing some mysterious liquid out of a package and dragging her tongue along it with a motion that can only be described as a literal, dedicated blowjob. She slips on her gloves and whines to herself that she really, really wants another bag of those spicy strips. Then she glances to the side and catches herself, mumbling that a perfectly sealed, non-perishable food stash is a sacred, precious resource. She picks up the spicy strips, running the calculations, and realizes that if she rations it, this single bag could keep her alive in a desperate situation for over a week. Reality then drop-kicks her straight in the stomach, and she freezes in horror. She realizes that trading precious food for that pile of useless gold might get Seong reprimanded, and not in a gentle HR meeting kind of way. Her mind spirals into a dark pit, picturing his organization with its obscene food reserves, definitely not short on disposable members. She envisions Seong getting tortured, his screams begging for just one more chance while snarling dogs circle him. She concludes in utter despair that he definitely won't come back, and their whole thing was just a brief, beautiful hallucination. But right then, to violently shatter her doom spiral, Seong absolutely obliterates that rusty door with a kick. The thing flies open, and he marches in carrying 4 boxes crammed with food, shouting at her to hurry up and help move the stash. Lilu instantly lunges through the air like a feral cat and tackles him, screaming "Boss." Seong's eyes roll back in despair as he crashes down with her mounted on top, boxes exploding and scattering every last item. She's literally perched right above his main part, sobbing that he actually came, that it's wonderful, and she thought he was lying to her yesterday. She presses her massive balloons closer to his face, tears streaming, while Seong asks why the hell he would ever lie to her. She chokes out that he brought a bag of useless gold yesterday, and a tier 1 enhancement serum isn't worth jack compared to a backpack stuffed with food, so his organization will definitely punish him. Seong casually tells her to relax, flashing his status, and pats her head like a loyal puppy, assuring her a single bag of food is utterly meaningless. He adds that he traded it for gold because the gold is useful to him, and he didn't take a loss, so she needs to get it through her head. She nods frantically from her knees, babbling her understanding, while Seong tells her to start picking up all the crap scattered on the ground if she gets it. He points at his aching back and grumbles about how the stuff rolled everywhere, while he bends down to scoop up a cabbage. Lilu stares at it, cradles the vegetable in her hands, and then her brain completely detonates, screaming, "Oh my god, these are vegetables." She literally shouts, drenched in nervous sweat, that his organization can actually cultivate fresh vegetables, as if he just showed her a holy relic. Seong gave Lilu a baffled look and declared it was nothing but a goddamn head of cabbage, asking if all this circus was really necessary. Lilu's eyes sparkled like frozen diamonds as she explained that after the Great Cataclysm, the soil was completely contaminated, making it impossible to grow any vegetables. She clutched that cabbage to her chest like it was her firstborn child. Seong shuffled closer and told her to quit crying, that if she loved them so damn much she could just have them, no big deal. Her eyes went impossibly wide, and she jabbed a finger at herself, stammering out whether he was actually giving her the cabbages. Then she tried to shove it back at Seong, insisting these vegetables were far too precious and she couldn't even begin to estimate their value, so she absolutely couldn't accept. Seong just stood there casually, completely unbothered. Lilu kept rambling, calling him a good person for offering such rare food, but since he'd hired her, she'd only take the payment she'd earned. Seong's face twisted in pure disgust as a single horrifying thought slammed into his skull. Oh hell no, did she just hit him with the good person card? He shoved the fallen cabbage back into the box and announced he'd been rethinking her payment situation. These foods, he pointed out, were way better at filling a stomach than those spicy strips. Then he whipped out a slab of pork and added that if she needed anything else, she just had to let him know. But he made it brutally clear that in return, the quality of her service had to keep up. Did she understand? Lilu pressed her hands together, shot upright, and swore she'd do her absolute best to keep him satisfied. Xiang clarified that for now, their relationship was strictly employer and employee. She'd function as his personal secretary and answer all his questions. Lilu tapped both her index fingers together in that weird little gesture of total comprehension. Xiang stacked all the boxes back up and revealed the real reason he'd bought meat and vegetables this time was that he needed her help hiring people. Lilu immediately asked what kind of requirements he had in mind. He said first, they had to be highly loyal, and second, they needed to have special skills. She suggested they hit up Grey Rat Town, where roughly 10,000 survivors lived, so they could find literally any skill he needed. Xiang then asked what the hell the connection was to their own settlement, Grey Rat District D. She smiled and cheerfully broke it down. Grey Rat Town sat right at the center, with 12 small settlements surrounding it. Those settlements were named alphabetically, starting from Grey Rat District A and going all the way to Grey Rat District L. She added that all 12 depended on Grey Rat Town for survival, and whenever anyone needed to pray for scarce supplies, that's exactly where they went. Xiang placed a hand on his chin and asked if there were many computer programmers there, the kind who could develop games. Lilu stared at him, utterly lost, and asked if he was talking about those primitive ancient products from the prehistoric times called computers. Xiang mused that they were a bit ancient and wondered if those people were hard to track down. Lilu scratched her head and admitted she wasn't sure, since before the Great Cataclysm, everyone was already using AI brains. Then she lit up, remembering there was a pre-cataclysm technical director in their camp who knew a ton about AI brain technology. She grabbed Xiang's hand and started sprinting, telling him to come on so he could grill the guy. Xiang was struggling hard because Lilu's speed was completely unhinged. He yelled at her to let go, insisting he could walk his own damn self. Later, as they were walking, Xiang asked if they ever freaking locked their doors around here. Lilu replied that everyone was dirt poor, so there was literally nothing valuable to steal. She went on that in the wasteland, unity was everything, and anyone caught stealing or disrupting that unity got exiled from all the settlements. Then they stopped and she announced they'd arrived. The guy was inside. From inside came the sound of someone absolutely screaming about meat, and the scene was pure, unfiltered gold. This dude, Uncle Wei, had an axe in his hand and had just chopped something right in front of Xiang. Blood and gore splattering everywhere. Xiang was totally disgusted, but Lilu called out brightly that she needed Uncle Wei's help. The scientist Uncle Wei emerged, axe still slick with dripping blood, and told Lilu she was lucky as hell because he'd just caught a fat one. He added that once he finished butchering it, he'd give them both some fine legs. Lilu smiled and replied that it sounded absolutely amazing. Meanwhile, Xiang's brain was doing backflips, trying to figure out what the hell they were talking about. Then he finally looked and realized, oh thank God, it was just a giant goddamn rat. Lilu was practically shivering with happiness, and Xiang asked if this was some kind of mutant creature. She confirmed that aside from zombies, these rats were the most common mutants, growing up to half a meter long and serving as their primary meat source. Lilu then introduced Uncle Wei, explaining she was there to offer him a job and that this was her boss Xiang, who wanted to hire help with insanely generous pay. Uncle Wei eyeballed Xiang and scoffed, asking what kind of generous pay a young punk like him could possibly offer, and if he was a scammer. Xiang casually lifted his arm for a handshake and stated he needed technical talent specializing in AI brains. He added that as long as Wei met his requirements, he'd pay 30 pounds of rice and flour plus 10 pounds of fresh meat every single month. Wei's face twisted in total confusion, mumbling about rice and flour like they were mythical artifacts. Xiang confidently replied that of course he was serious, and if Wei was worried, he'd even pay in advance. Wei shot a look at Lilu, asking if it was for real. She nodded and assured him not to worry, because as soon as the boss gave the nod, she'd haul the meat straight to him. Wei instantly grabbed Xiang's hand like it was the lost treasure of the wasteland, dropped to his knees, and declared that Mr. Xiang was looking at the single most knowledgeable person regarding AI brains in District D. Xiang casually pulled his hand free and said the man must have misunderstood. The job had absolutely nothing to do with AI brains. He then asked if Wei knew about computers, those ancient personal computers, because what he actually needed was someone who understood that primitive fossil tech. Wei just stared back, face blank, echoing the word computers with the purest confusion imaginable. So Wei takes one look at this whole computer concept and immediately writes it off as primitive garbage with a user experience that would make a cyberdog vomit circuits. Xiang just cuts through the theatrics and asks point blank if he's got the tech skills or not. Wei's stomach is screaming that the promise of rice flour and raw meat is too sweet to let slip. He scoots closer with the greasiest grin imaginable and starts calling him boss, fishing for the exact flavor of technology this lunatic needs. Xiang lays it out like it's the simplest gig in the world, just coding and building software to his personal specifications. Wei, trying to gauge how deep the rabbit hole goes, immediately asks if he's expected to handcraft 0.4 nanometer chips. Xiang flat out denies it, already looking a little flustered by the absurdity of the question. Wei, still probing for the catch, lobs another nightmare scenario about designing super AI core algorithms and gets slapped with another hard no. Wei instantly broadens his chest and declares he's absolutely golden, zero issues whatsoever. Then genuine confusion creeps in as he points out that software cooked on a computer won't sync with a biolink, so what's the actual master plan here? Xiang slaps down the curiosity with a terse reminder that his concerns are none of Wei's damn business, and delivers a masterclass in toxic management about how a truly good employee completes the task 100% without asking why. He rests a heavy hand on Wei's shoulder, and Wei, channeling his inner obedient lapdog, nods with a crystal-clear understanding of his new indentured servitude. Xiang, satisfied by the groveling, promises to handle all the hardware and guarantees the food supply will never run dry, then probes for any other requirements. Wei, playing it cool like he's ordering an extra side of dipping sauce, casually requests a biolink to speed up the really gnarly code, explaining he can port everything over and the cheapest bargain bin model will do just fine. Xiang gives a quick nod and vows to make it materialize, then spins around to leave as Lilu chirps that it's time to bounce, Uncle Wei, and they both wave their ridiculously casual goodbyes. Once outside, Xiang immediately grills Lilu on how much of a pain it is to actually score a biolink. She drops the intel that District Bay is a complete dead zone for them, but Grey Rat Town is the spot, albeit with a price tag that stings. Xiang, with the staggering audacity of a man who just bartered with sacks of flour, wonders aloud if today's grocery haul wasn't sufficient and if a biolink truly shatters the bank. Lilu sputters and waves her hands like she's swatting invisible bees, clarifying that expensive is for peasants like her, while for his loaded self buying 100 would barely register as a casual Tuesday afternoon. Xiang exhales like a man who just sidestepped a financial landmine and smoothly pivots to enhancement serums, asking if Grey Rat Town also delivers that particular brand of magic. Lilu fires back without missing a beat that tiers 1 and 2 are absolutely in stock there, but anything higher demands a full pilgrimage to the Physicians Association's Eastern Distribution Hub. Xiang, a glorious blank slate of ignorance, asks what the hell the Physicians Association even is. Lilu lays it out with the gravity of a history professor, revealing they're a top-tier wasteland superpower and the absolute masterminds behind every single enhancement and healing serum, and she's utterly baffled that her boss is this clueless about the world. Xiang scratches his nose sheepishly and mutters a weak excuse about his organization being a self-sufficient hermit kingdom utterly disconnected from the outside chaos. He then casually assigned her a new mission of buying a batch of enhancement serum from the Doctors Association, and Lilu cuts him off with an instant affirmation that it's a piece of cake. Xiang decides his immediate power move is to fetch a computer for Uncle Wei and dump literally everything else onto Lilu's extremely capable shoulders. She gives a crisp acknowledgement like a soldier receiving battlefield orders from a general she respects, but also finds slightly unhinged. Just as he's about to dip out, he throws in a wild curveball, instructing her that if absolute shit hits the fan during the trade, she should ditch the food and prioritize her own skin, asking if she gets the picture. Lilu stares at him completely confused, caught entirely off guard by this sudden splash of human decency, before a wave of genuine emotion washes over her, and she softly confirms she understands. After putting enough distance between them, Xiang yanks himself back to the real world and erupts with a euphoric howl that rattles the windows. He's cackling like a swamp witch, absolutely losing it over the fact that he bagged a technical director for a monthly wage that's less than a used gaming console, all for some sacks of flour and slabs of raw meat, and he blesses the wasteland as the single greatest civilization ever spawned. He blasts through the door like a disco hurricane, hollering for the entire universe to witness his uncontainable joy. Then the record scratches into sheer silence because Don is sprawled out in nothing but a bra and tiny shorts, muttering to herself about her budget group meal like she's delivering a TED Talk on fiscal responsibility. A crimson geyser of pure anime nosebleed erupts from Xiang's face as he chokes out her name, and she flips out in equal measure, shrieking his name while frantically covering her chest like he's the Antichrist himself. She immediately accuses him of being a shameless perv and then grills him on his mysterious whereabouts because she swears she checked his empty room earlier and found absolutely nobody. Xiang, with the slick smoothness of a greased weasel in a pinstriped suit, lies straight through his teeth that he was there the whole time, and her memory must be completely fried. He then yanks the front door open with manic energy, declares a rain check for a dinner date that very night, and disappears behind a door slam that echoes his sheer panic. Don stands there staring at the slammed door with a toxic cocktail of confusion, she delivers the universal, time-tested verdict that all men are exactly the same, just a pack of grunting pigs in human clothing. Outside, with his pulse crashing back to normal and his nosebleed clotting, Seong's brain connects the dots that Shuya bombed her audition earlier and is now slinging computers part-time in Computer City. He figures he can kill two birds with one stone and just snag the rig straight from her. Over at the shop, a sleazy fat dude oozes into Shuya's personal space and pitches his disgusting suggestion, dangling a promise to pick up the goods tomorrow if she plays along with his skeevy little game. Shuya, pure fire blazing in her eyes, absolutely rips into him with the scalding clarification that this establishment sells hardware, not whatever degenerate services his diseased mind is frantically fishing for. Shuya is mid-shift, already trapped in what she'd describe as the ninth circle of retail hell, when Seong, the absolute legend, materializes in her store and casually asks for a moment of her time. She practically teleports to his side, immediately unleashing a torrent of pure relief that her savior has finally arrived. Naturally, Seong fires back with a classic underhand pitch, asking if the drama was just some cheap guy trying to haggle her into an early grave. But Shuya shuts that down with pure venom, clarifying that this walking neckbeard actually thought an 8,000 yuan computer entitled him to a drinking buddy for the night, and she was absolutely floored by the audacity of who he thought she was. She then snaps into this hilariously posh, high society tone, demanding to know if he just popped in to watch her life implode in real time, to which Seong reminds her that he's literally launching a game company and needs a machine to match the ambition. He then points a decisive finger at the holy grail of graphics cards and instructs her to absolutely hook him up with the most obscenely powerful, top-of-the-line rig, specifically demanding she throw in an RTX 5090 like he was just adding extra guac. Shuya immediately tried to reality check him, clarifying that their store's god-tier spec sits at a cool 100 grand, and that since he's running a business rather than just no-scoping noobs, she can't fathom why he needs to burn that much cash. Seong just hits her with the cold, hard logic of software development, stating he needs a beastly system to push load limits to absolute breaking point, which forces Shuya to accept defeat with a shrug, tell him to stay put, and disappear into a back room to wrangle the components. That's the exact moment the human manatee decides to drift back into frame, sidling up to Seong with the greasy confidence of a guy absolutely convinced he's about to seal the deal, asking what budget he's playing with. Seong, playing the game with the calm of a Zen master, just flicks his gaze toward a price tag and drops the bomb that he's buying the $103,000 setup, and you could practically hear the gears grind to a halt in Fatty's brain as his eyes bulged out of his skull and he screamed in disbelief that someone would max out the specs completely. Right on cue, Shuya rolls back in with the monstrous PC loaded on a trolley like she's delivering a nuclear football, announcing the total is a crisp $103,000, and asking how the gentleman intends to pay, which is when Seong simply hands over his phone with the lazy energy of a man buying a candy bar. The terminal beeps, the payment clears instantly, and the despair that crashes over Fatty is so violent and total that you could almost see his soul evacuate his body, leaving Seong free to deliver the final brutal wink as he asks if that drink invitation is still on the table. The man absolutely combusts, screaming in pure unadulterated terror as his legs and survival instincts finally sync up, and he scrambles out of that store like a rat fleeing a sinking ship with a speed that should be physically impossible for his frame. Meanwhile, across the map in the absolute cesspool known as Grey Rat Town, Lilu is deep in a claustrophobic alley, loaded down with goods and surrounded by the type of bandits who look like they use tetanus as a garnish. She's still got that massive sniper rifle tucked away when the first dirtbag decides to shoot his shot, asking if she wants to have some fun in a tone so greasy it could lubricate an engine, but she just shuts him down with a glacial two-word rejection without breaking stride. That's when the real freak with a janky, counterfeit eyeball stands up, his optical malfunction swiveling as he loudly deduces that her bulging backpack is practically screaming that she's hiding top-tier contraband, which causes Lilu's patience to finally snap. She screams at them to disappear before she stops holding back, and in one fluid, cinematic motion, she whips off her cloak to reveal the absolute cannon strapped to her back, freezing the entire alley in a moment of pure, confused terror as one of the other goons nearly soils himself at the realization that she's armed. That single flex buys her enough clearance to slip out of the alley, and once she's alone, she forces herself to breathe, mentally chanting a mantra to stay absolutely stone cold because she knows that the moment she shows a sliver of weakness, those scavengers would swarm and tear her into shreds. Eventually, she makes it to the Wasteland repair shop, this grimy den where two grease monkeys are wrestling with a piece of junk, and she doesn't even get a hello before one of them just grunts out the price list without looking up. A base model smart terminal costs 15 kilos of gray rat meat, and every plug-in is an extra 5. She immediately specifies just the base model and stuffs her backpack right in the guy's face, letting it slam onto the weighing scale, where the mechanic peers at the number and begrudgingly admits that it's a solid, respectable portion of flesh. He hands over the device, she secures it in her pouch, and the man, suddenly possessed by the spirit of a sleazy used car salesman, leans in to ask if she wants to trade for anything else because he's got a mountain of hidden treasures, but she just shuts him down instantly with a sharp refusal and starts backing out. The moment she's out of earshot, the other worker asks if they should track her into the wasteland, but the main mechanic just kills the idea cold, saying it's absolutely not worth the hassle. A decision that definitely saved their lives. As Lilu puts distance between them, her mind is racing, realizing how dangerously close she was to being fully exposed. When her hand brushes the hidden pouch and a cold spike of adrenaline hits her at the thought that if these lowlifes had spotted the cabbage, the entire settlement would have descended into a full-blown riot. She finally bursts through the door of her destination, breathless, and is met by some mysterious figure offering the blandest welcome and inviting her to look around. But Lilu takes one disgusted glance at the potions on display and scoffs audibly that these are way too basic, and she demands hard-level serums. The man just gives her a pitying look, telling the little girl that high-level serums are far outside her financial orbit. But before he can even finish his condescending sentence, Lilu just whips out the cabbage like a royal flush in a high-stakes poker game. She instructs him to look first before making assumptions, and the sight hits him like a bolt of lightning, launching him clean out of his chair with a spring-loaded reaction as his brain short-circuits, trying to process the sheer impossibility of what he's witnessing. Now this random dude just launches himself at the gate with a speed that has Lilu instantly mentally bookmarking him as a freaking blur. She doesn't even hesitate, whips out that sniper rifle and trains it right on him, demanding to know what the hell he thinks he's playing at. The guy puts on this whole serene act, swearing up and down that he means her zero harm, before casually flexing his energy and asking if she genuinely believed that Rusty Pea Shooter could tickle a Tier 9 enhanced individual. Lilu's brain immediately blue screens, sputtering about how a Tier 9 enhancement is even possible, and why the medical association would piss away a Tier 9 distributor on a glorified dump like Grey Rat Town. He just shrugs it off with some cryptic wasteland wisdom about nothing being impossible, then abruptly shifts gears and asks if he can inspect the cabbage she's holding like it's the Holy Grail itself. She gives it a split second of side-eye consideration and hands it over, watching this man transform into a trembling, awestruck mess the moment that leafy orb touches his palms. He starts babbling about its freshness and color, absolutely floored that it's a real, radiation-free vegetable, basically elevating a cabbage to deity status and calling it a straight-up miracle. Lilu immediately spots her angle and throws down the gauntlet, telling him that if he wants it so badly, he can cough up an enhancement serum of equal value. The man recoils, accusing her of trying to extort him with that ridiculous equal value claim, and warns her to drop the idea fast. She fires back with flawless logic, pointing out that vegetables are literally impossible to grow in the wasteland, and she knows damn well how priceless this thing is. He scurries over to a cabinet, admitting that its value is all in its scarcity, but he's not about to partner up with some scheming little opportunist. Lilu pours on the charm, assuring him that her deal-making sincerity is as pure as a pre-cataclysm spring, and that seems to do the trick. He hits a button and a hidden inventory slides open, a gesture he frames as matching her sincerity with his own. He pulls out a box stuffed with a full set of Tier 1 to Tier 6 enhancement serums, plus a separate healing injection that can supposedly cure any cellular mutation disease. Then the real showstopper gets revealed. He gestures at a sleek new carbon fiber bio armor, the latest model, and Lilu's mouth instantly starts watering at the sight of it. She practically drools out the question of whether all that shiny loot is for her, only to get an immediate flick to the forehead and a hard no. He shoves just the serum box and the healing injection towards her, making it excruciatingly clear that those two items are her entire takeaway. Confused and a little salty, she demands to know why he even flaunted the armor if it wasn't on the table. He flat out says it's bait for a second trade, casually pressing the button to make the whole display vanish back into the wall. He lays down the terms, more cabbages, or any other fresh greens she's hiding, are the only ticket to that bio armor. Lilu's mind races, genuinely freaked out by how confidently he assumes she has a vegetable stash to pull from. He spells it out for her, stating the cabbage is too flawless, and clearly not some random lucky find, because any faction with mustard vegetable cultivation wouldn't just stop at a single head. She tries to play it off, swearing she just stumbled upon it in some pre-Great Cataclysm ruins, totally by accident. He practically rolls his eyes, pointing out that even if such ruins actually existed, they wouldn't have magically preserved just one perfect cabbage. He shoos her out, urging her to hurry back and discuss it with her people, dangling the truth that a suit of armor is infinitely more useful to them than a bunch of greens. She surrenders to the logic, yells for him to hold on to that armor, yanks up the shop shutter, and promises she'll be back as fast as humanly possible before slamming it shut. Left alone with the cabbage, the exiled man murmurs to himself about how losing that power struggle and getting dumped in this godforsaken hole turned out to be a blessing in disguise, letting him get his hands on these precious fuzzy cabbages. And just when you think the absurdity has peaked, we smash cut to the real world, where Xiang has just arrived at a modern supermarket and a delivery truck screeches to a halt in front of him. A hefty dude hops out, all business, calling him Mr. Chen and asking where to drop the massive delivery. Xiang just casually points to some sketchy back alley and tells them to dump it all right there. As the workers start unloading, one of them mutters in disbelief that this is over 20 grand worth of meat, and wonders aloud what kind of lunatic buys this much at once. His fatty friend shuts him down hard, telling him to mind his own damn business and just do the job. They both hop back in the truck, wave at Xiang with the classic "call us if you need anything more," and then peace out, leaving him standing before a mountain of packages. Xiang's internal monologue kicks in, relieved that the alley is usually deserted and blissfully free of security cameras, because otherwise he'd have zero clue where to stash all this contraband. Without missing a beat, he activates his ring's inventory and the entire pile of meat simply blinks out of existence in a single heartbeat. Staring at the ring, he grimly acknowledges this is a patch job at best, because with quantities this massive, someone is guaranteed to spot him sooner or later. His brain whirs through the logistics of renting a private warehouse as a stopgap measure, mentally pairing that with the idea of partnering with a food factory. That way, he figures, he'll have a much wider variety of food to choose from, and a legitimate front to cover the insane bulk smuggling operation. Xiang nonchalantly activated his ring and summoned an ice cream out of nowhere, because apparently he's living in a video game inventory now. He ripped open the wrapper, fully basking in the absurdity of his own situation. Just as he was about to get lost in that frozen treat, his phone rudely interrupted the vibe with a call. The voice on the other end dropped the news that the registration for Chenyang Technology was officially done, all neat and tidy. Xiang hit them with a breezy acknowledgement, like he'd just ordered pizza, not launched a company. He strutted out of that street declaring that his career had just been born, fully expecting confetti to rain down. Then he swung back home, announced his return and threw open the door. And there she was, Dandan wielding a mop like it was her personal lightsaber. Dandan didn't even let him get comfortable before she demanded to know what wild goose chase he'd bolted off on earlier. Xiang casually flopped onto the sofa. She closed in, suspiciously asking if he'd been on some secret job interview. That's when Xiang casually dropped the bomb that he'd forgotten to mention he'd started his own company, so the whole job hunting grind was officially dead to him. Dandan got right up in his face, her eyes boring into his soul as she asked if he'd actually launched a business. She followed it up by questioning whether he honestly believed she was as gullible as a toddler. Xiang's face flushed with pure embarrassment as he stammered out his defense, swearing up and down he wasn't lying. He confessed that his old family home had been bought out for redevelopment, basically hitting the generational wealth jackpot. Dandan jabbed a finger at him, connecting all the dots out loud. So that was why he'd been suspiciously generous the night before, putting her up in that swanky grand hotel. She called it what it was. He'd struck gold. Then she plopped down next to him, sighing about how disgustingly lucky he was. She got all wistful, admitting that even if her own tiny hometown got bulldozed, the payout would barely cover a new pair of shoes. And then she noticed something off. Why was he suddenly clamping a hand over his nose? Xiang's gaze had drifted south to her chest, and the sight of those balloons had unleashed a full-blown anime nosebleed, the kind that defies all medical logic. While frantically stemming the crimson tide, he managed to ask what her salary was looking like these days. Dandan actually paused to calculate, revealing that her take-home pay was a pitiful 5,000 and change each month. She casually added that without the company meals, she would have been a stylish corpse on the sidewalk ages ago. She dramatically draped herself down, lamenting to the heavens about when the universe would finally let her trip into a pile of overnight cash. Xiang couldn't resist a smirk as he informed her that getting rich overnight was pure fantasy. He then pointed at his own chest and asked if she'd consider jumping ship to work for his brand new empire. He confidently declared he'd triple her current pay, making it an even 15 grand a month, his expression screaming deal of a lifetime. Dandan's eyes bugged out as she repeated that number, 15,000, like she was tasting a forbidden fruit. She quickly did some rapid mental math, figuring out that if she lived like a total penny pincher, she could save nearly 100 grand a year. The excitement detonated inside her. She shot upright, already fantasizing about unhinged hot pot binges and casually buying designer bags whenever the impulse struck. Xiang, scratching his head at the sudden energy, asked if that meant she was in. She immediately backpedaled, saying not so fast. What if his whole company imploded in a matter of days? She insisted he spill every detail about the company first, so she could pass her own ruthless judgment call. She whipped out a pen like a hard-boiled detective, ready to take notes. Xiang laid it out. The company was registered that very day with a capital of 1 million, and their primary focus was PC and mobile games. Dandan scribbled it all down, then rubbed her eyes and declared the whole setup sounded sketchier than a back alley deal. She pointed out that aside from a pile of cash, he had literally zero other assets going for him. She drove the point home, reminding him that a real gaming company needed massive funding and an actual tech team, not just a dream and a bank account. Siang hit her with an infuriatingly confident smile, telling her to chill because that exact glaring void was somehow their biggest competitive advantage. Right then, she shifted gears, announcing the immediate priority was hunting down a decent office building and getting that damn game license application sorted. She started heading out, and when he asked where she was going, she threw back that she was off to quit her old job. Obviously, Siang's internal monologue started crying because damn, this woman was literally putting her money where her mouth was and showing support through pure, unfiltered action. Then his phone buzzed again, jolting him out of the moment. He answered with a simple hello, and the next words he uttered were a hollow "okay, I understand." Danden clocked his face immediately and asked if he was about to hurl, because he looked like absolute death. Siang's whole body went rigid, shivers running through him, as he revealed his grandpa had always struggled with his health. The diagnosis had just come down, terminal liver cancer, with the doctors giving him roughly a month to live, and he was already bedridden, so Siang had to go back and see him one last time. Without a single wasted second, Danden ordered him to pack his crap and buy the earliest ticket out. She physically shoved him towards his room, vowing she'd handle everything on the company's end. Siang glanced back at her, managed a genuine grateful smile, and said her name like a prayer. She waved it off instantly, reminding him they were roommates and there was zero need for that polite nonsense, so he better hurry the hell up and leave. After frantically packing, Siang bolted, his mind racing with a single desperate thought. There was absolutely no way he was letting his grandpa slip away like this. Not when he had that enhancement serum from the wasteland stashed away. There had to be a way to pull off a miracle. He hit the street with his backpack, his brain lit up with a single, insane idea. The enhancement serum from the wasteland could totally flip the script on terminal cancer. There was no chance he'd just let his grandpa fade out without a fight. Siang finally rocks up to the imperial capital high-speed railway station, when suddenly a voice calls out his name from behind like a jump scare in a horror movie. It's Chiron, an old classmate, and she's closing the distance while her brain visibly short-circuits over the sheer odds of bumping into him here of all places. She lays it on thick, reminding him it's been nearly 7 goddamn years, and Siang just nods with the enthusiasm of a man who's forgotten his high school survival instincts. Then she asks if he's heading back to Wanghai City too, and before he can even process the question, a train announcement roars overhead, screaming about ticket inspections about to begin. Siang mutters something about talking on the way, her already asking which seat he's in so she can go charm a stranger into swapping. He glances at his ticket with a grimace and admits he booked last minute, which meant only the bougie business class seats were left. She gives him an OIC laced with just enough disappointment to sting, then pivots to the idea of catching up once they reach Wanghai, but Siang's face twists into pure confusion and he tells her no, he'll figure something out, leaving her to blink and ask what the hell he even means by figure out. He tells her to hang tight for a second, then strides over to the ticket-checking lady with the confidence of a man on a secret mission, while Chiron's left there going, where the actual fuck is he going now? Siang slaps on his smoothest voice and asks the lady if there are any free seats left in business class, and she confirms that in his 4-seat row, he's literally the only lonely soul with a booking. Without missing a single beat, he taps his own chest and tells her to upgrade Chiron's ticket and put her right next to him, cost be damned. Chiron watches this unfold with an expression that's half amusement and half holy shit this is a flex, as the lady hands her the fresh ticket and tells her to keep it safe like a newborn kitten. What happens next is straight out of an R-rated romantic comedy. Chiron instantly lunges into a hug, squealing a thank you, but the real action is her chest pressing up against him like 2 overinflated party balloons. Siang's face turns the color of a freshly cooked lobster, and when she finally notices and asks what's wrong, he just stares off to the side, croaking that it's nothing and she's welcome. Once they're settled into their plush business class thrones, Chiron's head is swiveling everywhere like a kid in a candy shop, and she confesses this is her first time in this kind of luxury, marveling at all the extra legroom compared to the peasant cabins. She then casually asks why he's suddenly ditching the imperial capital and heading back to Wanghai, and Siang deadpans that his grandpa fell ill and sank into a depression. She jumps into reassurance mode, telling him not to stress because medical tech these days can basically raise the dead, so the old man will bounce back for sure. Siang brushes it off with a yay, then flips the script, asking what wind blew her into the imperial capital in the first place. She sighs and explains she was on a desperate grind to drum up business for her dad's food processing factory, since the past couple years have been a total bloodbath with everyone only wanting big-name brands. She keeps it brutally honest, saying they've been hemorrhaging money and can barely scrape together wages for the workers. The second Siang clocks the raw desperation in her voice. His inner wheels start spinning and a perfect grin almost cracks his poker face, because he's been hunting for a long-term food supplier to feed his growing wasteland faction. He thinks helping an old classmate won't just save her ass but will quietly bulk up his own operation in the shadows. So he drops the bomb, telling her he might actually be able to help her out, and she immediately pounces with a how. He reveals he's looking for a food factory to lock into a long-term supply contract, and she blurts out a breathless "really?" like she's just won the lottery. Siang assures her it's a done deal, but he'll need to do a site inspection first, and she's so thrilled she grabs his hand without even realizing she's doing it. Then a hiccup hits her brain and she pulls back, asking how a guy who just graduated college like her needs a massive order that sounds borderline industrial. Siang, smooth as oil, hides his wasteland ambitions behind a lie about starting his own company a while back and having business partners with very specific, very hungry demands. She buys it instantly and suggests they swap contact info. After arriving, Siang hails a taxi like a boss and tells her the site inspection will have to chill for a couple days while he visits his grandpa first, and she nods an okay as he disappears into the cab. The moment his ride vanishes, Chiron stands there waving, her mind racing with the delirious thought that this random reunion might be some Destiny-level shit woven by the universe itself. Right on cue, another car pulls up and a man's voice calls her name, so she scrambles inside and chirps a greeting to her dad. Her father, with the weary tone of a man who's seen every scam in the book, asks how the business talks panned out this time. She sets it up with the classic one bad, one good format, starting with the bad news that she struck out completely in the imperial capital. Not a single partner in sight. Then she unleashes the good news with a sparkle, telling him about running into her old classmate Siang on the high-speed train and how he just so happens to have a massive order dangling in front of her. Her dad's bullshit detector immediately flares and he mutters that an old classmate popping up with a miracle deal sounds like the opening act of a full-blown scam, so she better watch her back. But hey, that's fine, because this whole beautiful mess is just getting started. Siang finally rocks up to Wanghai City People's Hospital, and the moment he sets foot inside, a man comes striding out like it's fate. It's his dad, and the first thing out of the guy's mouth is the obvious observation that Siang is back. Siang, laser-focused, asks how Grandpa's holding up. His dad calmly reports that Grandpa just downed his meds and passed out, so they're gonna grab some rest first. He swears he'll wake Siang up the instant the old man's eyes open. Siang mutters his understanding and darts into the restroom, slamming the door like he's about to commit a crime. Inside that echoey little room, he's telling himself to hustle, and straight up activates his teleportation skill. His brain is screaming that he needs to find a medicine capable of curing Grandpa. In a blink, the world warps and he lands smack in Grey Rat District D. He starts trudging through the district and the paranoid thoughts immediately flood in. He wonders if Lilu might not even be there, and whether he should hunt down Uncle Wei instead. But can he even trust that guy? Shoving the doubts aside, he marches up to Lilu's house and pounds on the door. He's yelling her name, asking if she's in there, announcing he's looking for her, and then he just walks right in, because manners are apparently optional when you're on a mission. And there she is, mid-bra situation, scrambling to cover up. Siang's entire soul leaves his body through his nostrils as he bleats in embarrassment and yanks the door shut again. He sputters at her to put some damn clothes on first. A moment later, Lilu swings the door open, completely unbothered, asking what the boss is hunting for. Siang, still in full panic rush mode, cuts to the chase. He asks her to confirm that with today's medical tech, late-stage cancer isn't a death sentence anymore. She replies with total confidence that of course it isn't. She drops the fact that during the Great Cataclysm, the whole planet was drenched in radiation, so cancer was literally more common than a sneeze. If they couldn't cure it, she points out, humanity would have been wiped out ages ago. Siang, now completely dialed in, demands the cure rate. She tells him that specific medications had a 95% success rate about a century back. After the apocalypse hit though, nobody bothered to keep tabs on statistics anymore. A massive grin spreads across Siang's face as he silently thanks the universe for guessing right. He pivots and asks if this miracle medicine is available for purchase in Grey Rat Town. Lilu scratches at her tears, or maybe just her eyes, and drops the bomb that the answer is probably not. Siang's face slams into shock, but she immediately adds that the cellular disease serum produced by the Doctors Association also kicks cancer's ass. Siang doesn't miss a beat, telling her to take him there right now. Lilu, however, tells him to wait. Siang spins around, borderline frantic, asking what the hell there is to wait for because he needs that serum yesterday. That's when she casually pulls out an injection and hands it to him, announcing she already traded for one. Siang's brain short-circuits as he takes the serum and demands to know where she got it, asking if she went to the Doctors Association. Li Lu confirms that ever since he mentioned boosting their strength ASAP, she went and made a trade with the association using a cabbage. Xiang stares at the injection like it's a hallucination, barely processing that she traded a single cabbage for this serum. She waves a dismissive hand, insisting that no, this is just the bonus. She grabs him and drags him deeper inside, then whips out a briefcase like she's about to reveal a nuclear football. Flipping it open, she announces this is the real deal, a complete set of Tier 1 to 6 enhancement serums. Xiang's jaw unhinges as he dumbly repeats the words Tier 1 to 6 enhancement serums out loud, barely believing his own ears. Meanwhile, Li Lu is misreading the entire room, thinking the boss looks seriously pissed off. She convinces herself it's because she got too little in return for that precious cabbage. In her head, a cabbage is basically a treasure, so she's bracing for a scolding. Inside Xiang's skull, however, it's a full-blown confetti parade. He's mentally cheering that the trade was literally dirt cheap, and he can't believe how adorably clueless the Doctors Association is. Visions of hoarding potions and achieving total serum freedom start dancing in his imagination. Li Lu, picking up on the stone-cold silence, finally asks if she got ripped off. Xiang snaps out of his power fantasy, slams that briefcase shut, and plants it on the bed. He grabs her by the shoulders, eyes blazing, and demands to know how this could possibly be a ripoff. He then proceeds to spin her around like they just won the lottery, roaring that they've hit the absolute jackpot this time. He declares Li Lu his lucky star, his golden goose, his everything. She just stands there getting all flustered, mumbling that she's just glad she could help. Xiang just laid down the law in the most chaotic way possible. He plopped his butt on that bed and declared that from now on, the price is locked. No matter how much the buyer has, they swap for it. Li Lu's eyes lit up as she asked if that meant the distributor actually wanted to keep doing business with them. Xiang's brain started doing backflips, and he demanded every filthy detail about this mysterious contact. She spilled the whole origin story, and Xiang pieced it together, muttering that this guy was a Tier 9 human. Li Lu offered to find a safer trading partner if the risk was too spicy. Xiang shut that down with a grin, insisting that this Jianyan character sounded like a rock-solid partner based on her intel. She practically tilted her head like a confused puppy and asked why. He cracked his knuckles and broke down the 3 strengths that were absolute gold for their operation. First, since their tire line had leveled up, Jianyan had higher clearance and nastier channels, meaning he could snag gear like that bio armor she mentioned. Second, the man's goal was razor sharp, claw his way back into the inner circle of the Doctors Association, which meant he'd bleed supplies for ages. That alone promised a long, juicy partnership. Li Lu caught on quick and begged to know the third point. Xiang laughed that the third was simple as hell. The guy was smart. Her face twisted into pure confusion, so he spelled it out. The man spotted instantly that Li Lu wasn't the shot caller, yet he didn't try to hustle her or bait her into a trash deal. Li Lu's shoulders slumped, and she blamed herself for letting her inexperience leak through. Xiang stood up, looked her dead in the eye, and flicked her nose so casually it should have been illegal, telling her not to get discouraged because she'd already crushed it. She thanked him, clearly fighting back a smile, and Xiang snatched that briefcase full of serums, promising to return tomorrow to hash out the rest. Li Lu practically lunged forward, warning him that he absolutely could not inject a new serum yet. Xiang froze and demanded to know why the hell not. She launched into the science lesson. Mandatory waiting periods existed between each enhancement tier, otherwise the body throws a catastrophic tantrum. Generally 3 days between Tier 1 and 2, and over a week between Tier 2 and 3. Xiang's jaw tightened as he asked what sort of nightmare side effects happened if you rushed it. She pointed right at him and said the body had to fully absorb the serum before the next hit, or his physical form would just collapse under the strain. Xiang experienced the most brutal, cold sweat nightmare of his entire existence, screaming in disbelief. He stammered, asking how the hell he'd know when it was fully absorbed. She replied that the injected person would feel a clear, undeniable shift in perception, and he'd simply know when the time came. Xiang muttered that he understood and tossed a "see you tomorrow" over his shoulder. Li Lu dropped into a deep bow, flaunting that ass like a damn parting gift, and cooed goodbye, boss. Then reality snapped back and Xiang materialized right inside that grim hospital toilet in Wanghai City People's Hospital. He stared at the briefcase, marveling that the whole thing went smoother than his filthiest fantasy, calling that wasteland an absolute treasure. Pulling out the injection, he told himself this healing serum was going to drag Grandpa back from the brink for sure. A short time later, a doctor cornered Xiang's dad and dropped the bomb that she was recommending a move to hospital care based on the actual circumstances. She urged Mr. Chen to give it careful thought, and his dad mumbled that he'd think about it. Right then, Xiang stormed up and recognized her as Grandpa's attending physician, the tension hitting him like a truck. He rushed to his dad, demanding to know what the doctor had just said. His dad explained she recommended transferring Grandpa to hospital care, which meant finishing discharge papers and using palliative meds to make his final days more comfortable. Xiang's blood ran cold as he connected the dots and realized they were basically sending Grandpa home to die, and the terror gripped him like a vice. Xiang's dad comes back with the news that the cancer's not just knocking, it's fully redecorated the whole damn house, spread everywhere, and even the priciest treatments that could fund a small country would only buy 2 extra months of life. Xiang, cool as a cucumber, just nods and tells his dad he totally understands before heading inside. Then the dad says they should go see Grandpa, so off they shuffle to that hospital bed where the old man is barely hanging on. Grandpa locks eyes with Xiang, and in a voice so faint it's basically a whisper from the afterlife, croaks out his name. Xiang grabs his hand. Meanwhile, his dad's eyes are leaking like a broken faucet as he excuses himself to handle the discharge paperwork, leaving them alone. And right then, Xiang's brain does a little victory dance because he realizes there are no security cameras in these regular wards. Thank goodness for sketchy hospital corners. He leans in close, telling Grandpa he's packing a miracle drug, an injection that could actually cure him. Then he asks if Grandpa would be willing to give it a shot, figures this is just his sweet grandson trying to do one last good deed, so he might as well humor the kid. With that unwavering faith in Xiang, he weakly gestures to go for it. Xiang whips out that injection and jabs it straight in without a second of hesitation. Grandpa's face immediately flushes beet red, and then he suddenly clutches his chest. Xiang, heart pounding, asks if he's alright, if anything feels off or weirdly better. And Grandpa, with the kind of energy he hasn't had in decades, roars that he feels so light, all the pain has just vanished into thin air. The old man is suddenly stronger than a bull on steroids, and Xiang clenches his fist, thinking, holy hell, the serum actually works. Grandpa, now sharp as a tack, gets all concerned and asks if a drug this miraculous might bring trouble crashing down on Xiang's head. He points out that pulling a dying man back from the brink is bound to attract attention, and if word gets out, every terminal patient in the world would be clawing at his doorstep. Xiang reassures him to chill, telling him they just have to insist it's a medical miracle, and everything will be fine. He even drops the bombshell that apart from the two of them, nobody else knows the serum even exists. Grandpa throws up a proud thumbs up and swears on everything holy that he won't breathe a single word to anyone. Xiang then tells him to rest up while he goes to grab a doctor for a checkup and steps out into the corridor. Striding down that hallway, his mind is already racing, and he thinks there's just no way he can sell the healing serum on this side of things. I mean, he doesn't understand the underlying principles or even how the damn thing is manufactured, so a steady supply is a fantasy. He ducks behind a wall, peeking at the injection still in his hand, and the paranoia hits hard. If his ability to travel between worlds gets exposed, he's absolutely screwed. He tucks the needle safely into his ring, reminding himself that the ring is irreplaceable, but his own ass is not. That's why he desperately needs to level up his self-defense game ASAP so he can handle any crisis that comes flying his way. Now striding up to the reception desk, he totally flips the script and starts shouting for a nurse, telling her she has to check on his grandpa in bed 43 because the man suddenly sat up like a resurrected corpse. The nurse is baffled, checking the records for a Jianjun male, 69 years old, terminal liver cancer, all the grim details laid out. She glances at Xiang's forehead like he's lost his damn mind and suggests that maybe the long vigil has him hallucinating from exhaustion. Xiang, not backing down an inch, insists he's telling the truth and physically drags the nurse toward the room, telling her to just take a look for herself. When they burst in, there's Grandpa, casually strolling around like he's just returned from a spa weekend, asking Xiang what the doctor said. The nurse absolutely loses her marbles, lets out a holy shriek, and bolts out the door screaming that she's fetching Dr. Han right this second. Xiang stands there, a smug grin creeping onto his face, thinking, well, that definitely worked. Grandpa echoes the exact same thought. It really worked. And then in storms Dr. Han, wild-eyed and breathless, demanding to know where the patient is. She's ready to witness the impossible, completely unaware of the chaos she's about to walk into. Dr. Han basically orchestrated this whole inspection, getting Grandpa settled on the bed with a casual command to let her take a peek, right when Xiang's dad comes barreling in with the anxious energy of a man who's been stress-eating waiting room crackers for hours. He immediately demanded an update on his father, and she barely looked up from her chart before dropping the bombshell that Elder Chen, based on the results, was in freakishly phenomenal shape. Then she hit them with a twist, looking straight at them and admitting it was, well, surprisingly miraculous. Which is when Xiang saw his opening and stage whispered his concern like a bad actor in a happened to him was astronomically rare, so she was going to keep his case file active and call regularly to monitor his health, a level of dedication that screamed she was scientifically bewildered. The dad was nodding so hard his head might have fallen off, promising they'd absolutely cooperate, while the grandpa smoothly invited Dr. Han to drop by their place anytime she was free. Xiang instantly turned the color of sour milk, his nerves fried to a crisp as he physically started dragging his grandpa toward the exit like a bouncer ejecting a rowdy patron. Han just finalized the plan, scheduling a follow-up for the next week, and promising that if they found no abnormalities, they could have complete peace of mind, a sentence that the dad immediately agreed to. The grandpa, still being manhandled down the hallway, was shouting over his shoulder for her to remember to visit them, while Xiang's brain was just a panicked loop of the phrase, "Let's go, Grandpa," on repeat. As they were stumbling away, the old man had the absolute audacity to turn to Xiang and wonder out loud if Dr. Han would make a fantastic daughter-in-law for him, leaving Xiang sputtering and demanding to know what the hell he was even talking about. Watching their chaotic retreat, Han's mind was racing, fixated on the secret she was sure Xiang was hiding, because a patient named Jianjun had been in even worse shape than Grandpa Chu, and if he could make a full recovery, then maybe the impossible was now on the table. She dropped her hand decisively onto the phone and right there in the Huaxia Chu family wing, placed a call that was about to ruin someone's workday. A girl picked up, practically buzzing with corporate stress as she announced she was rushing to a company meeting and had 0 seconds for a chat, a classic power move dismissal. Han ignored the brush off completely, launching straight into the wild tale of a terminal liver cancer patient who, just today and without a single warning sign, made a sudden full recovery. The girl Zinzin felt a thunderous explosion detonate inside her skull, the words "full recovery" short-circuiting her entire business brain as she parroted them back in disbelief. Dr. Mi, Han spelled it out with brutal clarity that all his medical stats were screaming normal, and the cancer cells in his body had been completely, utterly erased. Zinzin physically walked away from her gawking employees, shooting off a command to notify the company that the meeting was postponed, and when her assistant tried to squeak out a protest, she just casually kept going. She started rapid-firing questions like a detective on a murder case, demanding to know what medicine he took and what treatments he underwent, her voice sharp with desperate curiosity. The doctor shut her down, admitting she couldn't say for sure and that his recovery unfortunately had absolutely zero connection to her own treatment plan. Zinzin's anger flared up as she ordered that the patient's detailed records and the entire treatment process be sent to her immediately, wanting the raw data in her hands right now. Han agreed to fire off the files but expressed deep doubt she'd find anything useful, prompting a sharp, confused question about why she'd say that. She dropped the real lead, suggesting Zinzin start her investigation directly with the patient's grandson, claiming it would be a much faster route to the truth. A confused silence followed as Zinzin repeated the phrase back, trying to figure out why a random grandson was the key to a medical miracle. Han laid it all out, explaining she had already signed a critical condition notice for the patient, but today, right after the grandson visited, he just inexplicably got better, with all evidence pointing to a kid named Xiang as someone worth investigating privately. Zinzin let the name echo in her mind, a hard edge of determination solidifying in her voice, as she confirmed she got it and made a firm, unshakable decision to hunt him down. Xiang gets back to his hometown, and the very next morning his dad is already on his case before he's even inhaled a crumb of breakfast, demanding to know where he's sprinting off to at the crack of dawn. Xiang, already halfway out the main gate, tells him he's skipping the meal because he's in a mad rush to meet some old classmate. His dad, probably side-eyeing him but distracted by party prep, just orders him to be back early for the big banquet celebrating Grandpa getting sprung from the hospital. Xiang tosses out a casual "got it." Xiang clocks that this particular alley has absolutely no security cameras and barely a soul ever passes through. His little brain churns out the perfect idea. This is the ideal spot to cross over, and surely Lilu and Uncle Wei won't mind playing the role of old classmates just this one time. He instantly whispers the crossover command and gets yeeted into the apocalypse world. Meanwhile, Lilu is in her own little heaven, absolutely destroying those spicy strips she bought with her hard-earned salary, moaning internally about how freaking yummy they are. Suddenly, Xiang creaks open that rusty iron door like a horror movie villain. She nearly chokes on her snack, jumps up, then her face splits into a huge grin as she calls him boss and asks if he finally made it back and handled that urgent business. Xiang throws up a casual thumbs up and boasts that the healing serum worked like a charm, and he's already huddled with the organization to deepen the collab with the Doctors Association. He then jabs a finger at the box of loot and tells her to prioritize trading that stuff for biological silk armor and swap the remaining vegetables for enhancement serums. She blurts blurts out, "Hold up, all of them," pointing out that enhancement serums can't be stacked multiple times, and if they try to hoard a bunch, they won't even be able to finish them. Xiang just smirks and reassures her they aren't the only ones who'll be juicing, because the organization has decided to set up a branch base right here in this hellhole. Lilu's jaw practically hits the floor, asking if he's serious, and then she rattles off the laundry list of threats in the area: zombies, mutants, and shady rival factions. Xiang claps back that this is exactly why he's using Grey Rat District D as the foundation to build an operations base. He then grills her on whether the people here are actually reliable. Lilu puffs up her chest, not just metaphorically, and swears that compared to the weasels in large settlements, the Grey Rat District D crew might be weak, but they're tight as hell and 1,000 times more trustworthy. Xiang layers on that strength can always be jacked up with enhancement serums, but character is the real gem. He declares his master plan to boost every single member of the base to at least tier 4, and then he singles out Lilu, pointing out that an executive like her needs to be enhanced to tier 5 or higher. Lilu's eyes go wide, and she practically shrieks, "What the hell?" Xiang, thinking it's a supply issue, asks what's wrong, and whether they can't trade for that many serums. She hardens up with fierce determination and tells him no, the real problem is much more serious. If everyone gets cranked to tier 4, it could completely annihilate District D. She then demands to know if after his injection he noticed his appetite had gone absolutely berserk. Xiang's brain finally catches up, and he admits that now that she mentions it, yeah, he's been shoveling in like 3 or 4 times the normal amount of food. She explains that's the nasty side effect of the serum. It fortifies cellular strength and supercharges your abilities, but it also ramps up your energy consumption to a terrifying degree. As Xiang chews on that, she breaks out the grim math. A normal human need near half kilo food per day. Xiang now demolishes 1.5, she herself requires 2.5, and a tier 4 enhancer would inhale a whopping 8 kilos daily. She warns that if all 200 plus souls in Grey Rat District D go tier 4, they'll strip every living creature near the town down to the bone, and then the enhancers will just starve to death. Xiang's mind races, and he finally realizes that's the nightmare she's been sweating. But then he does the quick mental calculation. Sure, 200 tier 4 beasts would need over a ton of food a day, but to him that's a total non-issue. He flashes her a cocky grin, grabs her shoulders, and tells her the food supply nightmare is his problem as the boss to worry about, and all she needs to focus on is building the base so it can repel any outside invasion. Lilu's face turns tomato red, and she mumbles that she understands. Before he can strut away, Xiang adds a solemn vow that he guarantees every person in that base will have their bellies fully met, no matter what tier of enhanced freak they become. Then Lilu, overcome with gratitude, screams "Boss!" and lunges into a full-body hug, declaring he's absolutely amazing. He carefully peels her off, probably to avoid drowning in his own blood, and tells her to calm down and take him to Uncle Wei, right now. She chirps okay, and they head over to Wei's house. Lilu calls out to Uncle Wei, and the old man spins around, spots Xiang and greets him with a casual "Boss, you're here." Xiang skips the small talk and demands an update on the research. Wei shuffles and admits this ancient computer tech is a bit of a learning curve, and he still has a few details to nail down. Xiang's temper flares, and he snaps that this is painfully slow progress. Wei immediately starts dancing around him, promising that if he just needs a simple computer program ported, he can do it right now, but it's a crying shame there isn't a single working computer for him to practice on. Xiang, with a dramatic flourish, reveals he's already prepared one, and the box Lilu was lugging gets plopped right in front of Wei. He commands Wei to just use that one. Wei's eyes light up, and he says great, he'll try it out immediately. He plugs the thing in, fires it up, and starts observing how the ancient relic actually executes tasks, muttering that now he sees how it works. Moments later, Wei announces that there's no problem at all, and Xiang can state his requests. As long as the hardware supports it, he can program anything. Xiang leans in and drops the real bomb. He needs Wei to develop an online game that can actually run on a mobile phone from 2 centuries ago. Xiang even whips out a preloaded game on a phone as a reference, ordering Wei to make something even better with way higher playability. Wei takes one look at it and says he'll study it carefully first. Wei then proceeds to play that battle royale, casually giving up kills like they're pocket change. After he finishes the whole damn thing, he scoffs and tells Xiang this pathetic excuse for entertainment doesn't even deserve to be called a game, because even the absolute worst trash from before the Great Cataclysm was infinitely superior. He suggests that if he's allowed to copy some of those pre-Cataclysm masterpieces, the development speed would be lightning fast. Xiang, oozing confidence, corrects him. You don't call it copying, you call it drawing inspiration. Now get to work. Wei, grinning like a little gremlin, nods along. Xiang sweetens the deal with the promise of an extra bonus once the finished product product is delivered, then asks roughly how long it'll take to finish development. Wei strokes his chin and drops the estimate. 7 days, tops, and he'll have it ready. Xiang hears 7 days, and his eyes practically launch out of their sockets like he just witnessed a lap dance from a mutant. The man's brain straight up blue screens because a AAA banger takes years, and even a garbage mobile game needs months. But in the wasteland, one solo dev can apparently handcraft a whole game in a week. Wei's just standing there, watching the boss's expression flip through emotions like a deranged TikTok, wondering why he's gone so quiet. He's mentally spiraling, convinced the boss might be judging his speed, so he decides to go all in and tells Xiang he can actually deliver even faster. Wei drops that there are other smart brain geeks in the settlement, and he'll recruit them like a scrappy startup crew. Together, he says, they can finish the whole thing in under 5 days. Xiang's mind does another somersault. 5 freaking days. To an ultimate grindlord like Wei, a 9 to 6 is probably a spa retreat, so he just pats the guy on the shoulder and says, "Go ahead, bring the squad." But Wei gets to his real concern. Adding more mouths to feed means more burden on the boss, right? Xiang shrugs it off, revealing he'd already planned to hire everyone in Grey Rat District D anyway. Wei's jaw unhinges with a silent scream of disbelief. Lilu pops up, all sunshine and confirmation, telling Uncle Wei the boss is dead serious. He wants to build a base for them. That's why they can recruit any loyal, reliable soul in this dusty hellhole. Wei's eyes get misty, a full-on Waterworks preview. Paul straight up collapses to his knees, calling the boss their savior and pressing his forehead into the dirt like he's trying to plant a gratitude seed. Xiang frantically lifts him up, insisting it's just a job, no need for the dramatic prostration. Wei, still wiping his face, breaks it down. The tax collection deadline is looming like a guillotine, and without Xiang's intervention, they'd all be corpse deep in trouble. The boss tilts his head. Tax collection. He shoots Lilu a side-eye, wondering why this juicy detail never came up before. Lilu sighs like it's just a minor annoyance and steps between them, promising to spill the details after she's done her settlement rounds. Xiang's like, "Fine, here's a phone for texting and I want that finished game in 5 days. Then Xiang spins around, says he's heading out, and Lilu and Wei chorus a respectful "take care, boss." The door clicks shut and they both freeze, speechless, processing the hurricane that just left. Wei turns to Lilu, demanding to know what kind of cosmic lottery produced a boss like this. He points out that the gear he gives them, centuries old, supposedly, looks fresh out the factory, which defies every law of decay. Even if it was never opened, it shouldn't look that pristine, right? Lilu just smiles, admitting she has no clue, and since the boss doesn't want to share, she's not about to go digging. Then Wei asks the million-dollar question. How do they know he doesn't have some sinister plan? She stares at him like he just suggested eating a radroach raw. Malice. This place is cleaner than a broke man's pockets. What could they possibly have that the boss would want? The food he's brought alone could have hired an entire army of revolvers. Wei has to admit that checks out. Lilu adds that the boss radiates a calm, peaceful vibe that no wasteland-born soul could ever fake, and she's more worried about some backstabbing piece of trash taking advantage of him. Wei asks if that's why she kept the tax situation under wraps. Her tone drops dead serious. The boss is their only shot at rewriting their shitty fate, so every threat must be eliminated. Wei, now at the system desktop, grunts in understanding and sits his ass down, vowing to finish the task yesterday. Cut to Xiang glitching back to reality, SIM card in hand, mumbling about needing to buy a new phone. Suddenly, bam, a shock from deep inside rocks him, and he's staring at his own hands while some random grandpa on the street gawks like he's a malfunctioning android. Then the sensation fades, and he realizes that's the serum absorption kick Lilu warned him about. He stashes the SIM card, reaches into his storage, and whips out a Tier 2 enhancement syringe. Right then, he slaps that injector on his hand and jams the serum in without a second thought. Xiang swaggered into an authorized smartphone shop, and the seller immediately launched into that classic, over-rehearsed pitch about their latest flagship model and its supposedly mind-blowing features. But Xiang chopped him off mid-sentence like a guillotine, declaring there was absolutely zero need for the sales script because he was already sold. He jabbed a finger at one specific phone, grabbed it like he was claiming a trophy, and shoved his SIM card in. Right that second, 8 missed calls from Churin practically set the screen on fire, and Xiang's stomach dropped straight through the floor as he realized he'd completely blanked on her existence. He muttered to himself how on earth he could have forgotten about Churin, his brain clearly running on fumes. Then he called her from Churin's house, and the moment she picked up, she instantly demanded to know where the hell he'd been and why he ignored all her calls. Xiang explained that his phone had totally died, and he'd just gotten back from buying a new one. She fired back an all right then, telling him to just sit tight because she was coming to scoop him up herself. After that, she stomped downstairs and commanded her dad to hand over the car keys so she could go pick up her classmate. Her dad, passing the keys like he was handing over a loaded weapon, squinted at her full face of makeup and pointed out how she got all dolled up just to drive drive herself. He warned her to watch herself being alone with some boy, and she completely lost it, shrieking that the guy was coming to inspect the factory, and what kind of twisted mind did her own father have? Her dad fired back with a triple serving of brutal honesty, saying first, that classmate of hers absolutely did want to see the plant. He added that second, the factory tour was apparently the cover story, and third, he was terrified his precious daughter was already as good as gone. Charon screeched at him to just hurry over to the factory and wait for them, because she was bringing Siang straight there, and her dad resignedly replied that he got it. 10 minutes later, Siang was scooped up, and they were absolutely barreling toward Charon's family food processing factory. The car blasted in, and the speed that Maniac was driving made Siang cling to his seat like a cat on a ceiling fan. Charon noticed his petrified expression and hollered at him, demanding to know if her driving was really that terrifying. Siang pulled out his best cute act, swearing it was not at all scary, and practically tumbled out of the car. Churen's dad came sprinting out, greeting him as Mr. Chen and apologizing that the factory was a bit out of the way, thanking him for making the trip. Siang replied that Uncle Churen and he had been middle school classmates, so he should just treat him like a nephew. The uncle immediately shut that down, saying business was business and they were partners now, so he couldn't possibly treat him like a kid. He then asked if Chiron had given Siang the full rundown on the factory, and Siang answered that she'd mentioned a few things during the drive. Siang smoothly pivoted, telling Uncle he wanted to get a solid sense of his requirements, specifically how many orders were needed to keep the factory healthy and chugging along. Chiron's dad broke it down, saying between staff wages, rent, and raw materials, they needed about 300 grand a month just to keep the lights on. Siang did the math instantly and replied that if he provided 400,000 worth of orders each month, they could maintain operations and even turn a profit. Chiron's dad confirmed that was absolutely the case, then grabbed his daughter's hand, dragging her aside. Her dad whispered furiously that this classmate of hers didn't look like he was there for business at all, but more like he was running a charity. He then absolutely freaked out, demanding to know if she'd sold her charms just to help her old man out of a jam. She shoved her dad away, insisting he was talking pure nonsense, and of course she hadn't done anything like that. The poor man toppled over with a loud crash, and when the two of them emerged again, Chiron was practically marinating in embarrassment while her dad turned his attention back to Siang. He asked if Siang had any specific requirements for his orders, and Siang laid them out right then and there without blinking. His one and only condition was that the packaging must be painfully simple, no logos, no production dates, and absolutely no ingredient lists. Chiron's dad stuttered out that technically they could do that, but those products wouldn't pass any regulations. Siang assured him not to worry, explaining he had his own distribution channels and the goods would never touch the open market, so as long as enough food was produced each month, the exact variety didn't even matter. He went on to stress that this was merely the bare minimum for now, and moving forward, orders would only increase, never decrease. Chiron's dad got all twitchy and nervous, asking if he was seriously for real, and Siang hit him with the ultimate power move. They could sign the contract that very moment. Once the contract was all written up, Chiron's dad handed it over, telling him to take a look and if there was anything he wanted to modify or add, just say the word. Siang dismissed it completely, saying there was no need because he trusted the work, and then he snatched that contract and signed it like he was autographing a fan's forehead. Right after that, Siang announced he had already transferred the payment, and Chiron's dad's phone buzzed with the notification. He stared at the screen, voice cracking, demanding to know why the entire sum was paid up front like some kind of fever dream. While the old man was still short-circuiting, Siang shook his hand with a serene smile, declaring that he trusted Chiron and trusted her dad even more. Chiron's dad finally croaked out that it was a pleasure doing business. Siang swaggers into Greyrat District D where a stage is already set up and the entire crowd is buzzing, because Lilo had just dropped the bomb that every last survivor of the district was assembled there. Of course, our guy casually works his way up onto that stage like he's the headliner at a music festival, completely unfazed. Meanwhile, some random dude leans over to a woman and basically asks if we can really count on that scrawny little skeleton. And the lady fires back that it doesn't matter who shows up because they've got absolutely nothing left to lose anyway. Siang then curves himself up on the stage and announces that his name is Siang, and he's planning to set up his own base right here, so from now on he'll be their boss. But he scans the crowd and gets nothing but blank, pitch black stares, which has to be a gut punch. The man is literally offering salvation, and they're just blinking at him like he's a malfunctioning robot. Siang follows that up by promising food aid and a future with no hunger, which finally gets a reaction when a man yells out if it's really true that working for him means no food worries. He jumps down into the crowd, insists it's the real deal, and then to really prove his sincerity, announces that every single person there can claim a free egg right that second. The crowd absolutely loses their collective mind, chanting, shouting, calling him fantastic, and screaming "Long live the boss." Xiang stands there soaking it in, thinking to himself that this is exactly the kind of reaction he was aiming for. He then launches into the grand vision, telling them all they have to do is follow his plan and work together to turn Greyrat District D into a proper base. The shitty wire fences are getting swapped for sturdy concrete walls, and those shacks they're squatting in will be upgraded into clean, warm houses. He tops it off by declaring he'll make sure they live like true human beings and not like the gray rats they've been treated as. Somebody pipes up with the inevitable question, can all this fairy tale actually come true? Xiang, fully in his charming hustler mode, says he gets their skepticism, and then hits them with an advance of a full week's food for anyone who signs on. Li Lu, from behind him, screams "Long live the boss" so loud it could wake the dead, and the whole mob joins in with a roaring cheer. Xiang wraps up his pitch by saying that's all he has to say, and anyone who accepts the terms should come sign up with him. The same guy who'd been doubting him earlier completely freaks out and starts hollering that he wants in, while a woman shoves him back, shouting about ladies first. The recruitment process kicks off in absolute chaos. Li Lu rattles off the first applicant's details, a 17-year-old named Fua, who knows his way around smart brain tech. Xiang instantly assigns him as Uncle Wei's assistant with a monthly pay of 25 pounds of food and 6 pounds of raw meat, and the kid, apparently named Hua, agrees before the sentence even finishes. Xiang shoves a contract at him and demands to see the next contestant. This absolute unit of a guy muscles his way up, admitting he doesn't know any tech, but he's got brute strength to spare. Li Lu reads his file, Zhang, 24, a Tier 1 enhanced human, and Xiang sizes him up, calling it a great foundation and declaring he was naturally built for construction. He offers him 40 pounds of food and 12 pounds of raw meat a month, and Zhang stammers that it's more than enough. And so it goes, one after another, until Li Lu finally cheers that every single survivor has signed up. Xiang breathes a sigh of relief, muttering that it's finally done. But the celebration is short-lived because he suddenly remembers the tax collection she'd mentioned earlier, and asks her to spill the details. Li Lu explains that every 3 months, Grey Rat Town squeezes a head tax from its subordinate settlements, and they demand payment in food. Xiang's jaw practically hits the floor because the survivors around here can barely feed themselves as it is. He asks if the rulers aren't terrified that everyone will just run away, and Li Lu just stares at him like he's from another planet, reminding him that the whole world is like this and there's nowhere else to run. She adds, practically sobbing inside, that they can barely cling to life in these shithole settlements, and going into the wilderness is a guaranteed death sentence. Xiang then points out that he's seen quite a few enhanced humans among them, and asks why they don't just rise up and rebel. She lays it out flat. The bastards ruling Grey Rat Town maintain a whole squad of high-tier enhanced humans to keep their regime afloat, so the survivors are completely powerless. Xiang's brain starts spinning, and he mutters that it's no wonder the rulers tightly control the total food supply of the settlements. They're terrified people will secretly trade food for enhancement serums. Since Grey Rat Town wants to keep the settlements weak, the more food they have, the higher the taxes they'll collect, so a clash is inevitable sooner or later. That means they need to accelerate their own procurement of enhancement serums. Li Lu just nods and says she understands. Xiang then sets the goal. They have to hustle like hell to build up enough strength to surpass those Grey Rat Town jackasses before the next tax collection comes around. Now the whole damn riot got buried under a mountain of cover-up bullshit, and Xiang jetted off to the imperial capital, landing at the airport like some wannabe tech mogul. As he walked, the dude's brain was already chewing on the question of whether Dandan was running the company into the ground or just barely holding it together. And literally right in front of his face, Dandan materializes, waving her hand like she's flagging down a runaway train. She hollered at him to get his ass over there. Xiang naturally asked why she'd bother picking him up herself instead of sending some underling. She clapped back, reminding him that he was the big boss now and she was nothing but a miserable potlet slave, so who else was gonna do it? She then roasted him with the truth that if she hadn't come, he'd be wandering around clueless, never finding the company's front door. Xiang couldn't argue with that. Fair point, he conceded. Then she marched him right up to the building and announced that this was the place. Xiang took one look and thought, not bad, pretty damn impressive. She proudly mentioned that she'd picked it out herself, no help from anyone. She then dragged his ass inside, pointing out the rows of regular employee offices on both sides, and telling him his was at the very end. She threw open the door to his office, demanding to know what he thought. Xiang gave his approval, saying he was very satisfied. Then she yanked over the boss chair and got down to business, asking how the hiring was going. She reported that finance and legal were already onboarded, but the other departments were still slogging through the process. Then she popped the question about whether he wanted to hold a meeting with the current staff. Seong shut that down fast, admitting he wouldn't even know what to say if they had one now. Don then hit him with a sarcastic jab about never seeing a startup boss act so hands-off and handsome manager-like right out of the gate. Seong told her to relax and clarified he'd mainly handle the project side and leave all other operations entirely to her. That's when she got all clutched up, whining that he just knew how to exploit her. Seong stood up from his chair, patting her, and spun it as building her skills and advancing her career so that once the company scaled, she'd be ready to be his right-hand woman. Right as he patted her, her face went all red like a damn tomato, and she muttered something about not knowing where his blind confidence came from, begging him just not to bankrupt the company. Pure arrogance. Thinking with the Wasteland's technological backing, failure was absolutely impossible. Then, switching gears, he asked her how the talks with the game distribution platforms were going. She grabbed a file and laid it out. Most deals were settled with standard revenue split ratios. Contracts all lined up, but she warned that the proprietary app stores for mobile brands required product reviews, which meant delays, and Seong instantly demanded to know what the holdup was. She revealed that the only real snag was with the Fruit Phone App Store integration. Seong squinted at the documents, asking what kind of issues they were dealing with. Don explained that their contracts subtly hinted they'd need to proactively offer some kickbacks, or else they'd just have to rot in the review queue. Seong's frustration boiled over, and he flat out refused to pay a single kickback. Dan tried to reason with him, pointing out that the Fruit Phone had a massive market share, and if their game couldn't launch there, they'd hemorrhage a huge chunk of potential users. Seong wasn't having it, telling her not to worry because the product would speak for itself. In his head, he was already convinced that sooner or later, those bastards would be begging them to list in their store. Dan threw her hands up, said fine, he's the boss, whatever he says, and that she's getting back to work. Seong then kicked back in his swiveling chair, letting his mind wander to even more megalomaniacal schemes. He started thinking that if he could develop his own mobile phone brand and corner the market, he could also take a cut from every game other people listed. But he caught himself, realizing it was still way too early for that level of world domination. So he stood up, headed for the door, figuring he should just go home first. And right there, smack in front of the company entrance, a girl comes barreling in and bumps straight into him. It was Fengyia, Seong's ex. She just stood there, staring at him, saying his name like a ghost from his past, asking what a coincidence it is, and straight up demanding to know where his girlfriend is. Our boy's face just absolutely short circuits, looking at her with the purest confusion as he repeats the word girlfriend like it's a foreign concept his brain is desperately trying to translate. Then the mental light bulb flickers on and he realizes that blabbermouth Jianglong must have gone and sold him out, feeding her the story that Shoya is his girlfriend. He dodges that emotional landmine entirely by pivoting to ask what she's even doing there, and she flashes the smile while dropping the bombshell that she's here for a job interview because she wants to switch jobs, his mind racing with the terrifying possibility that she's literally applying to his company. He keeps his cool on the outside though, offering a polite good luck while internally just praying for the ground to swallow him whole, and she stops him with a quick wait. He turns back and asks what's up, wondering if there's another shoe about to drop, and you could physically see her get all flustered for a second. She finally spits it out, telling him that Big Mouth Jianglong is trying to round up all the classmates who stuck around the imperial capital for a dinner next week, and she wants to know if he's going. Siang, being the absolute chess master of emotional manipulation, flips the script and asks if she wants him to go. She lays it on thick, pointing out there aren't many of them left in the imperial capital, and that if they keep in touch they can look out for each other. He agrees right then and there, promising he'll be on time. Then he ended the conversation, and after she gone he teleported to Apocalypse World. The moment he materializes at the construction site, it's like a military parade, everyone snapping to attention and saluting him as he starts inspecting the chaos. He cuts right to the chase, asking for a progress report on the defensive fortifications, and Jiang practically launches himself out of his boots standing up straight. The guy is beaming with pride, explaining that since everyone is working with full stomachs, they're all grinding like maniacs and will close the perimeter in just a few days, keeping all the ordinary mutant freaks out for good. Xiang immediately goes for the jugular with the hard question, asking if it only works against brainless mutants or if it can actually stop enhanced humans. Zhang chews on that thought for a moment and then delivers the grim reality check, admitting that against humans with actual brains, the defenses will be drastically less effective because people won't just dumbly walk into basic traps. Xiang's brain kicks into overdrive, the gears turning as he realizes he's going to have to pour gasoline on the fire of their weapons expansion program. Right at that moment, Jiang wiped his head around and announced that Lilu is back, and like a furry hurricane, she comes bounding over and launches herself onto Xiang, chirping that the boss is back. He manages to peel her off while thanking her for the hard work, and they head over to her spot, where she proudly declares that every single enhancement serum he asked for is right there. She pops open the briefcases like she's revealing the Holy Grail, explaining that with this stash, absolutely everyone can get juiced up to tier 4. Xiang hits her with the logical question, asking if the Doctors Association threw a fit about trading such a massive amount of serum at once. Li Lu just scoffs, utterly bewildered by the idea, explaining that they basically fulfilled a whole year's worth of trade demands in a single transaction, which left those greedy suits absolutely thrilled. Xiang greenlights the operation immediately, telling her to arrange the injections right away, and shoving the briefcase back into her hands. She double-checks if he's sure it's okay, and he just pats her on the head like a loyal pet, telling her not to worry because there's a literal mountain of food to go around. He sweetens the deal even further, promising that there will be more and more varieties and flavors coming down the pipeline. Her eyes start glowing like a raccoon staring at a dumpster buffet as she squeals that she can't wait to try them, and he seals the deal by promising she'll be the first test subject for every new flavor. She starts circling him like a hyperactive fox, practically shedding joy everywhere, as she declares him the best boss in the history of anything. But just as the party vibe peaks, her tone shifts and she drops the "oh right boss" that signals incoming bad news, revealing that word has officially leaked out about their food for supplies hustle. She explains that despite all their crazy efforts to swap people out and change trading spots constantly, the secret still ended up blowing up in their faces. Xiang takes it like a stoic gangster, admitting that exposure was inevitable and that this is exactly why they need to juice up their fighting force to rival other enhanced humans as fast as humanly possible. He throws in a command right on the spot, reminding her that after injecting everyone with the super soldier juice, she needs to remember to adjust their weekly pay to match their new status. Li Lu snatches up that backpack full of enhancement serums like it's a school bag, promising she'll read everything, recalculate the numbers, and report the total financial damage later. Xiang fires off another mission, telling her to pick out a few of the sharpest tools in the shed from the settlement and ship them off to Grey Rat Town to work deep undercover. She snaps to it, confirming that this way Wei will be the first to know about their every single move before they even make it. Xiang's anger starts simmering through his clenched fists as he explains they need more than just intel. They need to dig up exactly what kind of hidden trump cards the rulers of Grey Rat Town are clutching right now, growling through gritted teeth that only by knowing both the enemy and themselves can they emerge victorious in every single battle. Li Lu confirms the order, promising she'll go arrange the espionage immediately, but she pauses at the door with a cheerful little bombshell. She asks if he wants to check out Wei's research results, because apparently the mad scientist just radioed in saying he's finally cracked something. Xiang's entire mood flips as he declares the waiting game is finally over, and he heads off right that very second to see what kind of insanity Wei has cooked up in his lab. Xiang comes barreling into Uncle Wei's place, positively vibrating with anticipation, bellowing at the top of his lungs about how he heard the game was finally finished. Wei spins around looking like a raccoon that survived 3 consecutive apocalypses. Right on cue, a yellow cat thing sporting 2 horns and a pair of wings pops into existence on Wei's shoulder and lets out the cutest little demonic squeak. Xiang just locks up completely, his entire operating system crashing, because there's no damn way his eyes aren't pranking him. He gapes at the creature and essentially demands to know what fresh hell is perched on the man's shoulder. Wei, calm as a frozen margarita, explains that this is the actual game content Xiang asked for, and while he's busy scratching the little monstrosity under its chin, he adds that they used holographic projection to nail that virtual reality kick Xiang wanted. Xiang's brain is still leaking out of his ears as he wheezes out the question of whether all that wizardry can genuinely be pulled off on a phone. Wei fires back that of course it can, and they even cooked up a custom algorithm specially tweaked for the phone's hardware. He also mentions, with a shrug, that the algorithm is a bit old-fashioned by their standards, but it runs stably, and at the end of the day, that's what actually matters. Then, out of absolutely nowhere, a blue version of the creature erupts straight from the phone's glowing pixelated screen and leaps into the physical world, landing square on Xiang's shoulder. The shock hits him so profoundly he's just standing there thinking that in a handful of days these bastards have produced something so advanced it makes his entire concept of reality feel like a cheap knockoff. Meanwhile, Wei clocks the prolonged silence and silently freaks out, convinced the boss has gone all quiet again because he must be deeply unsatisfied. Suddenly, Xiang detonates with excitement, blurting out a frantic question about the creature's projection range and how far it can actually reach. Wei clarifies that since the holographic trick relies on the phone's camera, the maximum reach is about 3 meters radiating from the device. Still buzzing with a heady mix of doubt and manic curiosity, Xiang demands to know whether absolutely every scrap of programming in the game can truly be implemented using standard coding languages on a computer. Wei hesitates hard, his voice turning shaky as he confirms that it can, but then nervously admits he designed a brand new programming language specifically for it, and wants to know if that's going to be a problem. Xiang's hands slam down on Wei's shoulders as he practically screams that it's not a problem, It's beyond perfect. It's even more magnificent than his wildest fantasies. The sheer relief hits Wei so hard that his body just gives up, and he crashes straight to the floor, grinning with exhausted joy as he mumbles that it's great. Xiang suddenly remembers the man is mortal and frantically asks if he's alright. From the floor, Wei insists he's fine, and just hasn't slept in so long that drowsiness has turned into a full-body betrayal. Xiang scoops him up like a sack of precious bones, helps him onto a table, and tells him to sit his ass down and rest for a goddamn minute. Even half-conscious, Wei keeps slurring reassurances that he's fine and that the boss should feel free to ask about anything he doesn't understand. Xiang's next question is about the game's file size, because he's clearly waiting for some multi-gigabyte monstrosity. Wei, summoning his last functional brain cell, assures him not to worry, explaining that he used cloud technology so the data load on the device stays laughably small, just a little over 400 megabytes. Xiang's tongue practically glues itself to the roof of his mouth as his mind spirals into the reality that modern mobile games regularly clock in at dozens of gigabytes, and even basic card games can't squeeze down that tiny. He's internally screaming that this wasteland tech is just straight-up obscene magic. Wei, still sounding like a man running on fumes, slowly adds the catch that with cloud technology, there's zero way to run the game offline, and it has to connect to the server through the internet to load any data. Xiang just grins like a villain who's about to set a bank on fire, thinking to himself that this is not a concern at all, because how else are players supposed to get milked for cash inside the game? He pitches his final question right there, demanding to know how the payment system has been designed, and you can practically see dollar signs flashing in his pupils. Wei grabs the smart brain, hands it over, and explains that they borrowed the payment templates from other games, the ones perfected before the Great Cataclysm by companies that had turned squeezing players dry into an art form. Xiang's mind trips down a greedy memory lane of VIP tiers, gacha pulls, collection logs, and character growth systems, and he realizes out loud in his own head that after 200 years of wild technological leaps, the tricks for milking wallets are still exactly the fucking same. Wei cautiously asks if the boss has any more questions, and Xiang snaps back that he doesn't, instantly pivoting to ask when he can get his hands on the source files. Wei promises with sudden, chest-thumping confidence that he only needs one final round of value tuning, and if everything checks out, the finished product lands in Xiang's lap tomorrow morning. Xiang's attention shifts as he points at the actual phone and asks Wei what he thinks of it, and Wei, after a long, painful hesitation, describes it as an astonishingly well-preserved piece of ancient junk. Xiang's ego visibly deflates while he internally cringes at his precious phone being branded ancient garbage. He pokes further, asking if Wei reckons he could design a brand new phone based on the hardware they've got right now. Wei taps out immediately, admitting that hardware is absolutely not his zone and that his entire specialty is software development, leaving him clueless about industrial design or physical components. Xiang, still grinning through the embarrassment, smoothly asks if Wei knows where he could hire someone who actually understands hardware and industrial design. Wei mumbles that Grey Rat Town is crawling with all sorts of people, so there's probably someone there who knows their way around a circuit board. Xiang makes a firm promise right then, telling Wei to keep polishing the game and that if the final product turns out truly interesting, everyone is getting an extra bonus. Wei, now practically glowing through the exhaustion, slams his confidence on the table and swears that they will absolutely, without a shadow of a doubt, not let the boss down. Xiang absolutely teleports back into his apartment. His phone starts screaming at him with an unknown number. The voice on the other end oozes this polished corporate smoothness, introducing herself as Chu Xin and saying she wants to discuss a business deal with Mr. Chen Yang in person this evening, which sends Xiang's internal scam alert sirens blaring so loudly, he actually jokes out loud that scam groups must be getting frighteningly elaborate with their theater productions these days. Chu Xin, without missing a single beat, assures him in this unnervingly calm tone that she completely understands his doubts and will prove she's not a scammer, which only makes Xiang's fury boil over as he mutters about her being a complete nutcase before snapping the phone shut and physically walking away from the conversation. His mood does a violent 180-degree flip as he practically yells about food being the undeniable #1 priority, sliding into his culinary zone and setting a table with 4 steaming hot plates in front of him, taking a deep, dramatic inhale of the aroma. Right on cue, the door groans open and Shu shuffles in looking like she'd been professionally drained of every drop of life force. Xiang, bless his perceptive little heart, hits her with a perfectly timed dinner invitation just as she's at peak exhaustion, later sliding a bowl of food towards her and taking a wild, knowing stab at the source of her sadness by asking if she went through another audition. She confirms it with a face duller than a rusty spoon, and he immediately follows up by observing that her expression is screaming louder than any audition rejection ever could, a fact she desperately tries to shut down with a plea for him not to even mention the disaster. She then spills the agonizing tea, explaining that she auditioned for a new drama by a famous director, a project whispered about across the entire industry as a ferocious frontrunner for this year's ratings champion, which makes Xiang's eyes practically bulge out of his head as he asks how a self-proclaimed total newbie even gets a shot at something that colossal. Shu absolutely crumbles, crying like a helpless child while bawling out the brutal truth that she didn't even audition for the female lead. It was a pathetic, random passerby role with 4 measly lines, and the universe still decided to slam the door in her face. Xiang's protective instincts ignite into pure fury as he preemptively asks if the director tried his casting couch sleaze act again, but she sadly clarifies that this time the role was handed to someone with connections, her face a twisted mask of discontent as she asks him point blank if she's simply not cut out to be an actress. She freezes mid-bite, trying to spit out a hesitant, stalling reassurance, just as her phone shatters the moment, prompting her to shush him violently and take the call with a confused greeting that quickly morphs into a shocked, loud exclamation that someone better be completely serious right now. Xiang watches her face transform into a mask of pure, unprocessed disbelief as she stares at him without a single word, which naturally freaks him out completely and makes him demand to know why she's trying to give him a heart attack on purpose. Shu then informs him with a deeply altered, spine-tingling tone that she needs to get to know him all over again, a statement so cryptic and unsettling that he's just left staring blankly, begging her to explain what that's even supposed to mean. She doesn't answer with words, but instead physically backs him up and pushes him against the wall, both of them standing there, locked in this bizarre, tense standoff, as she slowly begins to debrief him on the phone call, revealing it was the director from the audition just moments ago telling her she passed. Xiang's brain visibly short-circuits as he manages to squeeze out a confused, stammering congratulations, his entire nervous system on red alert, as Shu plants one hand on the wall right next to him. Then she drops the thermonuclear bomb, clarifying that the role she landed is the actual female lead, and she will be the main heroine of this year's biggest drama, a revelation that makes Xiang desperately point at the food to suggest an immediate and massive feast to celebrate, and maybe to escape this insane wall-pinning situation. Sho clamps his head between her hands with laser-focused precision, telling him not to rush off just yet because the director revealed the sole reason she managed to land this role was because of him, a statement that makes Xiang physically squirm as he tries to deny knowing any directors at all. A chilling, creeping realization slithers into his mind as he thinks about the mysterious woman who called him earlier wanting to do business, and right on cue, his phone rings like a divine escape rope, which he seizes immediately, wiggling out of her grip while stammering that he needs to answer this call first. He hits the answer button with the desperate relief of a man dodging an existential crisis, and on the other end, the unmistakable authoritative voice of Chu Shin purrs from her chair, legs crossed, Xiang staring at his phone on speaker, mind racing, when Sin suddenly drops this bomb, asking if he finally believes she's not some 2-bit scammer. My guy's blood pressure spikes, he's furious and dead serious, and he fires back wondering what kind of business a woman of Miss Chu Sin's status could possibly want with a regular dude like him. Chu doesn't miss a beat. She tells him she'll text an address and he better show up solo, no entourage. Meanwhile, Shu's face is a whole horror movie. Then, out of nowhere, she just ends the call, click, dead air, leaving Xiang yelling hello and hey into the abyss like a dork. Shu, still trembling, immediately asks Xiang if he was the one who pulled strings with the director. He shuts that down fast, swearing he knows absolutely nobody in the entertainment world, not a single soul. She knows he's innocent now, he even reassures her, but that only cranks up her confusion another notch. Now she's spiraling, biting her nails, scared out of her mind, asking what kind of deal is so damn important that this woman went full detective mode, digging into their backgrounds just to flex her power and cash. All for a simple meeting means whatever Chu Sin really wants is on a whole other level of insane. Xiang, totally clueless, just shrugs and says there's no choice. The woman made it crystal clear over the phone, so he's gonna have to grow a pair and meet her face to face. Shu grabs his hand, pure terror in her eyes, telling him it's way too dangerous. He doesn't say a word, but she doubles down, offering to give up the lead role entirely if he'll just stay put. Inside, he flicks her forehead, calls her a dummy, and laughs it off. She's completely baffled, swatting at him and demanding to know what the hell he's doing. Then he lays it out, explaining that if this chick is willing to go to these lengths just to get close, refusing her won't make her disappear into the night. Shu, still processing, stammers out a "you mean," and Xiang clenches his fists, spelling it out. She'd just find another way to pressure them, and that would be even more lethal for all of them. He concludes that the best play is to attend the meeting, figure out her endgame, and then decide what the hell to do. So, with that, Shu grabs both his hands, voice trembling, begging him to be extra careful. Xiang just flashes a grin and tells her to relax because he's got a plan. Fast forward a few hours, and the meeting time is here, this creepy old building. He's standing there, scoping out the decor, thinking how old school and mobster chic the whole setup is. two bulky bodyguards, built like refrigerators. One of them grunts out, asking if he's Mr. Chen Yang, and Xiang confirms like, yeah, that's me, no autographs please. They inform him they gotta frisk him for weapons, so Xiang just says go ahead and throws his arms up like he's at a damn TSA checkpoint. After a quick pat-down, they tell him to follow them because the young lady is waiting inside. He's thinking none of these dudes are ordinary, and he honestly can't tell if his tier 2 enhanced ass could even take them in a fight. After a tense walk, the guard with brown hair knocks on a door and announces that Mr. Qin Yang has arrived. From the other side, Xian's voice oozes through, simply commanding to let him in. The doors swing open, and Xiang has zero clue what fresh hell awaits. Who's in there? What's about to go down? There she is, Xin, sitting pretty on the other side of a table absolutely loaded with food, like a goddamn feast. She gestures for him to take a seat, all fake pleasantries, while Xiang's mind is screaming danger, danger. Then she grabs the wine and starts spinning this story about how urgent things were, so the way she set up this meeting was kinda rude, and she hopes he can forgive her. She brags that this restaurant isn't open to the public, but the imperial cuisine is legit and he should totally dig in. And then, with this devilish smirk plastered on her face, she drops the real bomb. She's been digging into his background for days, and to apologize, she'll punish herself with the first drink. Xiang is absolutely livid, practically growling that it's easy for her to say, because how the hell could he not mind a violation like that? Xin just sets the wine down and calmly explains she only wanted to confirm he has no ties to anyone in her elite school circle. Her expression shifts, and she insists that detail is crucial, like she had no other choice. He snaps back, furious but cautious, that a nobody like him wouldn't be connected to a big shot like her anyway. She actually looks pleased and tells him he's absolutely right. Then she leans in with this curious, almost predatory look, and reveals the real kicker. If his grandfather's liver cancer hadn't suddenly been cured, they never would have crossed paths. Xiang's brain damn near short-circuits because in that moment he realizes the secret is out, it's been exposed. He can't believe his ears, thinking that's it, the cat's out of the bag. The room suddenly feels 10 degrees colder. Xiang is standing there with this frozen, constipated expression, trying to play dumb like he just landed from another planet. He mumbles something about having zero clue what she's even talking about, but Xin immediately shuts him down with a voice sharp enough to shave a yak and orders him to drop the pathetic act right there, and promises 3 absolutely unhinged rewards if he spills the secret. First, she says she'll have someone surgically patch up all those dirty loopholes in his grandpa's medical records so nobody ever uncovers that steaming mess. Second, she'll ram her VC fund straight into his baby company, Chenyang Technology, with an angel investment so filthy it makes angels blush. We're talking 100 million in exchange for a measly 5% of the shares, which hits Xiang's brain like a freight train made of solid gold. His mind practically detonates. He can't believe his ears, and his heart is threatening to crack a rib while he mentally carts around that mountain of cash. But he slaps on a mask of composure over his terrified face, and somehow manages to croak out a question about the third reward. She slows her speech to a lethal crawl, her face hardening into something that could stare down a firing squad, and then drops the bomb about earning the Chu family's friendship. Xiang blinks like a toad in a hailstorm and repeats the phrase back at her, stuttering for clarification on the so-called Chu family friendship. Xin casually reveals that her grandfather is none other than Chu Liangpeng, and she dares him to just look the man up if he wants to understand. Xiang whips out his phone, thumbs flying across the screen, and pulls up an image of this intense man in a blue military-style uniform. Xiang nearly swallows his own tongue and gasps out a demand to confirm that this legend is really her grandfather. Xin smirks with the confidence of a woman who owns the weather and asks if he now comprehends how staggeringly, brain-meltingly valuable the Chu family's friendship actually is. Inside his skull, Xiang is already running the calculations and realizes that money isn't the damn problem. With his wasteland tech, he'll become the richest man on the globe sooner or later anyway. But Grandpa's medical records are a genuine landmine, and he desperately needs a ghost to scrub that disaster clean. Plus, if he wants to do business without getting shanked by the universe, he needs some heavyweight shadow standing behind him, and Xin is offering exactly that. He steadies his nerves and points out that there's nothing legally chaining either of them in this deal, so how the hell is he supposed to trust her? Xin immediately cooks up a proposal, promising to deliver the first 2 rewards in advance the very next day, and as for the Chu family's friendship, that will snap into action the second her grandfather is fully cured. She flashes an expression so diabolically scheming that even Machiavelli would take notes, and then asks how that arrangement sounds. Xiang is fighting tooth and nail to keep his cool in front of her and agrees that the plan works, confirming that once he receives his payment tomorrow, he'll hand over the medicine the day after. Xin locks eyes with him and declares with absolute certainty that when her grandfather recovers, she will personally show up to thank him. Xiang immediately waves that off, insisting he doesn't need her parading over to offer gratitude. He just needs her to keep the whole thing locked in a vault. They lunge into a handshake, and Xin adds that if his method actually works, keeping a secret is firmly in both their best interests. Then Xiang grabs a glass for the toast and proposes a toast to a happy cooperation, which is just pure chaotic energy at this point. They clink their glasses together with a sound like a tiny gong of destiny. The dinner wraps up, Xiang finally strides out, and the moment he vanishes, a guard slinks up to Scene to report that the target has left. Scene snaps an order to keep him under suffocatingly close surveillance, and to report every single twitch of his body to her immediately, and both guards bark a crisp yes ma'am. Her frustration boils over while she thinks about her grandfather, and she practically grinds the words out through clenched teeth, warning Qinyang not to dare disappoint her. Meanwhile, Xing is weaving his way home, and when he arrives, he rings the bell only to find Shu waiting up for him without a wink of sleep. She yelps out his name the moment she sees him, asking if he's actually back, her voice thick with concern. Her next frantic question tumbles out as she demands to know whether that woman gave him a hard time. Xing reads her worry like a neon sign and gently plants his hands on her head, assuring her that it was nothing, that Xing just wanted him to do her a favor. He slaps on a vibrant, reassuring smile to signal zero danger and tells her she can relax and go play that lead role without a single worry. But Shu's brain is still doing terrified cartwheels, and she asks again, her voice trembling, whether he's absolutely sure it's really okay. Xiang sidles closer, comforting her with every fiber of his being, and asks if he looks like the kind of broke poser who pretends to be rich when he's not. Shu practically melts right into his hands, looking like the loveliest puddle of relief, and murmurs that she always knew he was the most reliable person on the planet. Suddenly, the door blasts open at warp speed as Dandan comes crashing through, hollering Xiaoya's name at the top of her lungs, and announcing she absolutely must rant. Shu and Xiang instantly spring apart like teenagers caught in a forbidden sofa moment, casually standing around to deflect every ounce of suspicion. Shu clears her throat with a painfully obvious ahem and asks Dandan what the hell is up. Dandan, furiously kicking off her shoes in a frenzy, announces that she ran into yet another absolute weirdo today. Shu throws her a sideways look and asks what kind of cosmic magnet she is for these people, and Dandan just wails that she hasn't got a single clue either. Xiang is lurking on the sideline, smirking like a man who has seen too much chaos for one night. He tries to slither out of there by announcing that the two of them should keep talking while he retreats into his room first. Once he slips inside, he twists the lock, stands there frozen for a second as if his whole nervous system rebooted, and then crashes down to the ground because his heart is thundering like a war drum. He's practically vibrating with the revelation that this insane sensation can only mean one thing. The Tier 2 enhancement potion has finally been fully absorbed. He's so disgustingly energetic and happy that he could probably punch a hole through the ceiling while laughing like a man who just stole Fate's wallet. Xiang is standing in his living room, testing the boundaries of his physical prowess like a man possessed. He throws a lightning-fast jab at the empty air. Then he unleashes another punch, so vicious you could hear the air cry. He pauses to check himself out, looking down with a slightly disappointed pout, and mutters that his strength shot up by more than half compared to before. Standing up straight, he raises his clenched fist, deep in contemplation. He then muses that according to Li Lu, a Tier 2 potion should take at least a week to fully absorb, but his freakish body soaked it up in under 3 days. Opening his hand, he stares at the Tier 3 potion like it owes him money. He tells himself he'd better figure out what the hell is going on before he even thinks about injecting that next level juice. Then time does its thing, and the scene fades into a view of the sun peeking over a dusty, hazy landscape. Xiang marches up to Lilu's place and swings the door open without a single knock. Suddenly, Lilu sprints toward him with a smile that could blind someone. She launches herself off the ground and wraps her arms around him in a hug so tight it could crush ribs. She's clinging to him, squealing that he's finally here, while Xiang just smiles softly and holds up a tiny glowing green vial. He tells her there's something he needs to ask, and her eyes go wide with curiosity. Xiang extends the green vial toward her and states that his Tier 2 potion has been fully absorbed, demanding to know why it happened at such an insane speed. She takes the vial, squinting at the glowing green liquid like it's an alien artifact, and admits she's absolutely clueless because she's never witnessed absorption that rapid. Then she locks eyes with him, her expression deadly serious, and declares she does have a theory. She launches into an explanation that before enhancement potions can strengthen a person's physique, she actually pronounces it physique-curs, which is adorable. They first have to repair all the cells damaged by radiation. She goes on, explaining that the heavier the radiation damage, the longer the repair process drags on. Li suddenly points a trembling finger at Xiang, her face flooded with concern and shock, and announces that since he absorbed the potion so fast, it means his body hasn't been affected by radiation one single bit. She throws her hands up in complete confusion, trying to make sense of the impossibility, and cries out that after the cataclysm, every damn person on the planet was bathed in radiation. She steps even closer, reaches out and presses her hand against Xiang's chest, looking utterly horrified as the realization hits her. She starts to ask why he is, but the words get stuck in her throat because the implications are too insane. Xiang leans back, scratching the back of his head with an awkward laugh to wave off her alarm. He breezily remarks that their organization's anti-radiation facilities must just be incredibly advanced. No big deal. Then he casually asks if there's any risk from absorbing the potion too quickly, and she snaps back immediately that there's absolutely none at all. Mentally, he lets out a massive sigh of relief and tells her he's got a task. She needs to go trade for another healing potion, and he'll swing by to pick it up tomorrow. She responds with a sharp "got it" that rings with the devotion of a loyal soldier. Xiang heads out, ordering her to get back to work while he goes to grab the game from Uncle Wei. Lee chirps a bright "see you later, boss" that trails after him like a cheerful ghost. Xiang arrives at Uncle Wei's place and pushes through the door, immediately asking if everything is ready. Uncle Wei, standing there with the other recruited guy, beams and declares that it's all set and waiting. He proudly produces a small rectangular box and announces that the entire project data is stored on this hard drive. Then, practically buzzing with energy, he adds that thanks to those young helpers, the whole process sped up like a rocket. Xiang is over the moon and praises him, declaring that everyone involved in the development gets an extra month's worth of supplies as a bonus. Wei and the other worker lose their minds with joy, gazing at Xiang like he's a generous king, and they belt out a roaring, "Long live the boss." I swear they would have dropped to their knees if he'd asked. Now we cut to the past world where Xiang is in a meeting with Dandan, who immediately drops the panic bomb. She calls him Boss Chen and asks what the hell they're going to do about the game license, because the application's been stuck with 0 review, and at this rate they'll never launch on schedule. Xiang tells her to chill, keep everything else moving as planned, and leave the license to him. Dandan stares at him absolutely flabbergasted and asks if he knows the people in charge of approvals. Xiang locks eyes with her, looking cunning and determined, and says no, but he's just forged a very valuable friendship. He whips out the hard drive and reveals that it contains the game's source code, ordering her to hand it to the testing department so they can play it and compile a list of possible improvements. As he passes her the drive, she storms out of the room, ready to conquer. Xiang then grabs his phone and dials Xin, who answers with a smooth "Hello, Mr. Chen?" Sounding like a nervous wreck, he addresses her as Miss Chu and asks if she can do him a massive favor. His company is about to drop a game and he needs her to push the license approval through. He's practically sweating bullets just asking, but she replies without missing a beat, telling him of course, just wait for her good news. Xiang's eyes sparkle like a kid on Christmas, and he thanks her profusely. Before hanging up, she drops a cold reminder that this will be the only help he gets from her until he fulfills his promise. Xiang takes the hint, says he understands, and promises he'll repay the favor, and with that, the call ends. Then this absolute racket erupts outside his office, and he's immediately like, what in the actual hell is that noise? He steps out to find every single employee tearing the place apart in a total frenzy, and someone screaming at Sister Dandan asking if she's found it yet. Dandan yells back that she hasn't and orders them to check over there. Suddenly, another employee shrieks that they found the last mountain-moving ghost, and brace yourself, it was hiding inside the damn printer. And that's when everyone spots this bright red bird, and the same guy exclaims that his bifong just leveled up, spewing flames all over the ceiling while zipping around like a caffeinated phoenix. Xiang finally strolls out, scaring the daylights out of everyone, and casually asks if they're all having fun. The white-haired employee nearly loses his mind, demanding to know how the boss created such an insane effect. Another guy, practically wetting himself with joy, explains that the moment he opened the game, the tiny creature popped out and nearly scared him to death. Xiang just shrugs and says it's nothing, promising they'll be seeing way more of this black tech madness from now on. He then calls everyone over, tells them to pipe down, and announces that the game license will finish review today, so the launch won't be affected. The employees practically combust with happiness, shouting that it's great news. Next, Xiang drops that the official title of their game is Unknown World, and they'd better use that name consistently for all publicity. Then he asks who the legal counsel is, and Dandan orders Luo Qing to step forward. Out glides this absolute vision, a beautiful orange-haired girl in a cute outfit, and she confirms she's the company's legal counsel. Xiang tells her there's a contract signing at 2 p.m., and he needs her there, no excuses. Then he drops the bomb that he's secured 100 million yuan in angel funding, so nobody has to sweat the company's cash flow anymore. He looks them dead in the eye and says if they're willing to work hard, he'll never be stingy with their compensation. The employees erupt, screaming that their boss is a damn legend and showering him with thank yous. Fast forward to the next day, and the Chu family's lawyer introduces herself as he/she, saying she'll be attending on their behalf. Xiang sits there, gives a simple hello, and he/she slides over a blue contract, telling them to read it carefully for this financing round. Luo takes the file, her sharp eyes scanning every single word, while Xiang insists they wait until his legal counsel reviews it first. After reading, Luo's entire face twists into pure, unfiltered shock, and she barely manages to stammer out that there's absolutely no problem at all. She explains with a tone of utter disbelief that these people are investing 100 million in cash for only 5% equity. And get this, even if the company never turns a profit, they can't hold anyone accountable just because they don't get dividends. When Xiang asks if there are any legal issues, Luo confidently swears there are none and tells him to sign and stamp it immediately. Xiang doesn't hesitate. He snatches the pen, signs faster than a man possessed, and slams the star seal onto the paper. Gishi, looking pleased as punch, congratulates him and confirms the investment funds will hit his account that very same day. They seal the deal with a handshake, Xiang sounding almost giddy as he says it's much appreciated. As they walk toward the exit, he apologizes for troubling her with the trip, and she assures him it's just part of her job, no big deal. The guard opens Hishi's car door. Xiang tells her to take care, and she waves from inside as the vehicle pulls away. Xiang heads back to the office, but right as he's getting there, another wave of noise hits him, and he wonders what the lively sound is now. He lurks silently, eavesdropping on his employees going absolutely feral inside the hall. Dan is rallying the troops, declaring that the boss has already done everything possible, and now it depends on their marketing. With full energy, she fires them up, and another employee reassures everyone that the game's quality is so astronomically high there's no real competitor. Dane, drunk on ambition, tells them to get back to work because tomorrow morning they fire the first shot of a new era in mobile gaming. The entire room, completely hyped and ready to bleed for the company, screams in unison that they've got it. Xiang, listening in, feels a swell of confidence and tells himself that with morale like this, nothing can go wrong. Suddenly his phone rings, and when he sees the caller ID, he mutters Chushin's name before answering. On the other end, as she reveals she's already altered all of his grandfather's medical records. Her eyes and tone promise absolute destruction if he dares to forget what he promised her. Xiang, calm as a frozen lake, reassures her he won't go back on his word and will deliver the medicine. She cools off slightly and tells him the usual place, "See you there," and he agrees, ready for whatever nightmare comes next. The very next day after that call at Scene's house, the nurse doing her grandfather's checkup completely lost her damn mind, frantically dialing up everyone and screeching at the chief doctor that Dr. Mi, Shen's patient, had organs failing on an industrial scale, his vitals spiraling into the gutter at warp speed. Dr. Mi, Shen's already snapping on his gloves and shifting into full crisis mode, told that nurse to jack up the dosage, keep a razor-sharp eye on his breathing, and brace for CPR any fucking second. She somehow squeaked out a flustered yes, looking like she was about to keel over herself. Moments later, Dr. Shen bolted out of that room, slammed the door shut like he was fleeing a crime scene, and Scene, with hope still clinging desperately to her eyes, asked how her grandfather was doing, and the doctor had to spell out the whole wretched truth. The cancer cells had thrown a damn party and spread even further, organs were cascading into failure, and medicine had officially thrown in the towel. He looked so devastatingly hopeless while telling her, like he was personally handing her a dead puppy. He put a hand on her shoulder. Poor Scene was so terrified and totally lost, completely shattered, not a shred of hope left anywhere in her body. Shen laid it out. Over the next couple of days they'd use machines to keep the old gentleman conscious, and if she had anything left to say, she'd better say it fast. Right then, the bodyguard swaggered up from a distance and announced that the family head was holding council in the main hall and required the doctor's presence immediately. Shen gave a nod of understanding, but before trudging off to that meeting, he turned to the broken Sin and offered his condolences with a heart so heavy it practically dragged on the floor. And there she was, crying to herself, muttering desperately that Chen Yang had to make it in time. It was her very last thread of hope if she wanted to see her grandfather alive. Meanwhile, out in the godforsaken wasteland at Li Lu's tiny base camp, brutal dust storms were blasting grit everywhere, like nature's middle finger. Inside, Li Lu was hunched over a table, scribbling something with intense focus while a fat bag of gold just lay on the ground like a pirate's wet dream. Xiang strolled in, curious as hell, asking what the hell she was so busy with, catching her in the middle of some serious calculations. She told him, all business, that she was arranging next month's supply distribution, not even blinking. Xiang's eyes locked onto that bag of gold and he grinned, asking if that was actual gold and reminding her he'd specifically said there was no need to deliberately hoard it anymore. Li Lu casually mentioned that this shiny pile got dug up during infrastructure work and the crew were just gonna toss it like trash, but she figured he might still need it, so she had them stash it away. Then, with a magician's flair, she produced the healing potion he'd asked for, all boxed up, and confirmed it was the real deal. Xiang's face lit up with pure, unadulterated glee, and he showered her with praise for being an absolute legend. But then Li Lu casually remembered something juicy. During a transaction request the day before, He Jianyan from the Doctors Association had slipped in a very specific request. Xiang, instantly suspicious, asked what kind of request, and Li Lu, speaking slowly, revealed that the guy wanted to meet him in person. His guard shot up like a fortress. He demanded to know why the hell he'd want a face-to-face. Lilu speculated that it was probably because Hejianian was eager to forge a deeper, more intimate cooperative relationship. Xiang, ever cautious, sought her advice, and Lilu didn't hesitate for a second. She strongly recommended agreeing to it. She laid out the cold, hard facts. Right now, Hejianian was their base's single most important partner, the middleman through whom they sourced not only potions but even firearms and weapons, making him absolutely indispensable. Becoming chummy with the Doctors Association, she argued, would be a seriously good move. Xiang mulled over the potential outcomes for a moment, then gave Lilu the green light to arrange it and have him come to the base the very next day. She practically bounced with happiness, chirping a yes and bowing her head obediently. And then Xiang, in a burst of genuine affection, reached out and softly pinched her cheeks, telling her she was so incredibly capable it was almost ridiculous. After wrapping up all his business in the wasteland, with the deals and even the Doctors Association stuff flowing smoother than a fresh jar of Skippy, Xiang zapped himself back to his room. There, his phone was blowing up with frantic missed calls from Chu Xin. He finally picked up, and Xin's voice was so panicked and rushed it sounded nothing like her usual cool self, practically begging him to bring the medicine over immediately. Xiang, picking up on the sheer terror in her tone, asked if something had happened to warrant such a rush. Xin's voice dropped into something so grave it could sink a battleship, as she explained that her grandfather's condition had taken another nosedive, and his life was dangling by a thread at any moment. Xiang got the picture instantly, told her he understood, and demanded she send the address right away. A taxi slammed on its brakes right in front of Xin's residence, a place with entrance gates so absurdly huge they screamed old money, and out stepped Xiang. The guards practically rolled out the red carpet, telling him Mr. Chen should please come this way without a hint of delay. He shot them a quick thank you and followed, his eyes taking in the opulence as he was escorted towards Xin. From a distance, Xin spotted him and yelled out, running toward him like a woman possessed. Xiang handed over the potion, telling her this was the requested miracle juice, and that to keep it a secret she'd have to inject it herself and then dispose of the syringe completely. He warned her fiercely that nobody besides her and her grandfather could ever know about this, no exceptions. She nodded, said she understood, and started walking away, but after a few steps she spun around and declared that if her grandpa truly recovered because of this, Xiang would be her friend for life. Then she bolted faster than an Olympic sprinter toward her grandfather's room to deliver the potion. Bursting inside, she announced that she needed to speak with the old man alone for a bit. The frail grandpa, with a weak gesture, shooed the nurses out for a while and beckoned her closer. Xin, her voice trembling with a mixture of hope and terror, said she had obtained a special medicine that could cure him and asked if he'd be willing to give it a try. The old man's shaking hands grabbed hers, and he told her that this old man didn't have many days left anyway, so if she wanted to try, go ahead. Even if it failed, he'd never ever blame her. Seeing tears streaming down her face, choked out that she understood. Then she jammed that needle in and administered the medicine. Xin is holding her grandpa's trembling hands, and the old man is literally on his deathbed telling her not to be afraid because he knows his own body. He was mid-sentence basically telling her that her care was enough for him when his heart just seizes up and he groans in this gut-wrenching pain. So naturally, Xin is completely terrified, asking him what's wrong with a look of pure panic on her face. But instead of kicking the bucket, Grandpa suddenly just sits bolt upright like a spring-loaded zombie and rips off his ventilation mask. He stares at his hands, completely unable to believe his eyes, and announces that his arms and legs suddenly have strength again. The man literally declares that he thinks he's recovering, standing there shocked at his own body like he just found a winning lottery ticket in his hospital gown. Xin bursts into tears, screaming that it actually worked, her eyes practically popping out of her skull at the sight of this deathbed grandpa suddenly looking healthier than a yoga instructor. She immediately sprints for the door, saying she's going to call someone to give him a full body checkup right that second. But in a flash of pure instinct, Grandpa snatches her hand and yanks her back, telling her to come back first with this intense, startling look on his face. The tension is thick enough to cut with a knife as he grips her hand, and Xin just stares at him with wide eyes, her voice dripping with worry as she senses something is seriously wrong. With a face full of deep concern, Grandfather gets straight to the point and asks Xin where exactly she got the vial. She tries to put up a brave front and lies right through her teeth, telling him she got it from a friend without even breathing the name Xiang. Her grandfather climbs out of that bed he was laid out on like a corpse and immediately tells her that she's a grown woman, but still acts incredibly rashly. He lays the logic down hard, asking her what the hell she's going to say if she rushes out there and people start interrogating her about how he magically recovered. It hits her like a brick wall, and she mumbles out a half-baked backup plan about telling everyone it was just some random folk remedy from a friend. And then Grandpa absolutely explodes with fury, shouting at her about how unbelievably muddle-headed she is being. He points at his perfectly healthy body and shreds her logic apart, asking her how in the world anyone would believe a folk remedy could cure a guy with one foot already in the grave. She finally understands the massive mistake she was about to make and just shuts up and listens to her grandfather. He gets real serious, explaining that a special medicine capable of curing cancer would cause a massive global sensation if anyone found out about it. His mind is already racing, thinking about all the vultures who would come swarming from every corner of the planet to hunt for this and the endless gossip it would ignite. He declares with absolute certainty that they cannot expose this mysterious friend or his medicine so easily under any circumstances. Scene understood exactly what Grandpa was getting at, but she still had her doubts and pointed out that a sudden miracle cure requires some sort of explanation for people. Grandpa strikes a ridiculously cool pose and just smiles, saying there's actually no need to explain much at all and that they should just say he got better on his own. Still full of doubt, she presses him further and asks what they're supposed to do if the people simply don't believe that lazy excuse. Grandpa just shrugs like a stone-cold boss and says they can choke on their disbelief because nobody is going to torture a sick old man for answers. He turns back towards his bed and lays down the final law, insisting that under no circumstances can her friend be exposed, not even a little bit. With an intense glare and perfect clarity burning in her eyes, she finally agrees, telling Grandpa not to worry because she knows exactly what to do now. So Grandpa waddles back to the bed and pulls his bedsheet over himself like a kid hiding from a monster, committing fully to faking the sickness. He reminds her that suddenly jumping up and moving around would draw way too much attention, so he's going to lie there a while longer. On top of that, he tells Zinxin to remember to repay this guy's kindness properly, and she drops the bombshell that she's already invested in his newly founded game company. She describes it like it's nothing, basically saying it's like she handed him $100 million for free. Grandpa locks eyes on her and just calls her a silly girl, which startles her completely because she thought she was being a genius. He then blows her mind by explaining that if this guy really wanted to make money, he could easily rake in hundreds of billions with that medicine alone. The whole reason he accepted that mere million was just so she wouldn't have to drown in guilt over the massive debt of saving a life. Listening to all of this, Scene just blushes hard, realizing the level of humble subtlety this mystery guy is operating on. But then Grandpa switches gears instantly and starts shooting off a barrage of deeply personal questions, asking Scene if this friend is a man or a woman, how old he is, and if he's married. She gets so flustered and embarrassed by this sudden interrogation that she cries out for Grandpa to stop imagining such wild scenarios. Grandpa just holds her hand gently, admits he was wrong for prying, but then demands she find a chance to bring this guy to meet him regardless. Meanwhile, outside the house, Xiang just sneezes out of nowhere and gets this smug, self-satisfied look plastered all over his face. He asks himself if he's just gotten more handsome recently, assuming that's the reason more people are suddenly thinking about him. Right then, his phone buzzes with a message from his flatmate Joe Dandan, stating that Unknown World has officially launched for download on all major platforms and is skyrocketing. His smile just gets wider as he thinks about how a holographic projection game like this is literally one of a kind in the entire world. He knows that once it's out there, it's bound to cause an absolute sensation, and he's already looking forward to seeing tomorrow's retention numbers while he stares at the sun. Over at a crowded train station, some random guy is struggling to squeeze into the train, already grumbling to himself about how it's impossible to get a seat during the evening rush. He glances at his phone and groans, thinking about how he's played every old game to death and desperately wants the industry to release something new already. Just as he has that thought, a game screen pops up showing the new rankings, advertising Unknown World as an immortal cultivation AR game that can satisfy every desire with a download size of only 400 MB. He scoffs out loud at the audacity of a mere 400 MB file, daring to call itself a full AR game, accusing the developers of bragging with absolutely zero preparation. Despite his skepticism, he hits download anyway because he just has to see what kind of circus act is going on here, and the registration clicks through successfully. But the second the registration finalizes, a rabbit-like creature literally jumps out of his phone, and he just screams in pure uncut terror. An old grandpa sitting on the train spots the chaos and loudly exclaims, asking what that thing on the kid's shoulder is, and if it's some kind of AR tech. The guy is startled out of his mind because the creature is just sitting on his shoulder now like it pays rent, and other passengers are amazed that an old man even knows what AR is. Somebody corrects the atmosphere, saying it's less like standard AR and more like the holographic projections straight out of a sci-fi blockbuster. The old grandpa just loses his mind at how lifelike it is and demands the kid explain how the hell he pulled off a stunt like that. The kid, completely stumped and freaking out, just says he has no idea, explaining he just casually downloaded some random mobile game and the thing just popped out on its own. Now comes an absolute chaos unfolding back at the apartment, where Dandan casually asked if they'd gotten the first batch of data yet, and this overconfident employee just puffed out their chest and assured Sister Dandan that yeah, it was finally out. But when Dandan actually saw the numbers, her eyes practically bugged out of her skull, and she let out this wild gasp, immediately screaming that she had to tell the boss. She took off like a freaking Olympic sprinter, wind whipping past her as she burst into Xiang's room, barely able to contain herself as she shouted that there was amazing news. Xiang just sat there totally stunned, watching her barrel in like a crazed tornado, his brain scrambling to figure out what the hell she was about to say. Then she dropped the bombshell that with zero marketing, their game still crushed 3 million downloads on the very first day. Her eyes were practically dollar signs at this point as she added that the paid conversion rate had hit an insane 40%, like she was already counting stacks of cash in her head. But Xiang, being the perpetually disappointed perfectionist he is, just frowned internally and thought that the actual numbers were actually lower than what he'd expected. Dandan looked like she'd just been slapped by a wet fish, completely floored that he'd say something so ridiculous. She tried to snap him back to reality by asking if he was serious, pointing out that most games couldn't even dream of hitting a measly 2% pay rate. And then Xiang fired back with that smug, condescending question of whether their game was just like most games. She hesitated for a second, and that pause said everything. She knew exactly where he was going with that. He got up from his chair like some kind of delusional startup messiah, eyes blazing with this almost scary confidence and energy, and declared that they were going to build a legendary company that won purely on product quality. He slapped his hand on her shoulder like a motivational coach on steroids, then clicked his phone, and out of nowhere this badass dragon-looking creature materialized above him like some kind of vaporware pet. Then he dropped the real nightmare, announcing that from that day forward, everyone had to open the game during both their morning and evening commutes, all while casually playing with the holographic beast. Dandan just nodded and said she got it, promising to go inform the team right away. Fast forward to 9 p.m. at the office after the shift had ended, and one employee was finally heading home when she suddenly remembered that ridiculous instruction. She pulled out her phone, muttered to herself that she almost forgot, and launched the damn game like a reluctant soldier following orders. She let out a relieved sigh once it was done, and then, bam, this tiny little dragon creature, with 3 horns, a tuft of hair, and a tail, appeared floating above her. She stared at it with these huge, sparkly puppy dog eyes, completely mesmerized, and admitted that it was so cute, which was honestly a shame since you couldn't actually touch the thing. Then she started talking to it like a total weirdo, nicknaming it Xiao Bei and announcing that they were going to make this game #1 in the whole damn country. The little creature just purred, tilted its head adorably, and let out this soft yah. After surviving her commute home via public transit, she walked in and announced she was back, only to find Zhu Zhen, a reporter for Game Portal magazine, already chilling at her place. Zhen immediately asked if Chow Chow, yeah, that's her name, had been working overtime again, and whether she'd even eaten yet. But Zhen's eyes went straight to that floating dragon creature, and she literally screamed, wow, like she'd just seen a ghost made of candy. She asked what the hell that thing was because it was so stinking cute, already lunging off the sofa to get closer and try to pet the damn virtual animal. Chow Chow, ever the sly marketer, casually explained that it was a virtual image from her company's game, a companion spirit beast that could be projected into real life straight from your phone. Zhen's eyes went all soft and begging as she asked if she could pet it, to which Chow Chow just shrugged and said go ahead, but warned that she wouldn't actually touch anything anyway. After Zhen waved her hand through the creature a few times, she laughed in amazement and confirmed that wow, it really was just a visual image. Then Zhen asked the big question, whether this game was really made by Chow Chow's company. And Chow Chow, with this insufferably smug and proud smirk, guaranteed that she'd never see this kind of tech at any other game company on the planet. Zhen's eyes literally glittered with greed and excitement as she called it incredible, then immediately begged to come to the company for an interview tomorrow, because this was apparently the most groundbreaking game ever made. Chow Chow paused for a second, then smacked her forehead and remembered that, oh right, Zhen was literally a games magazine reporter this whole time. She pulled out her phone and said to hold on while she messaged director Xiang to ask for permission. Meanwhile, Xian was already mentally spending her annual page view quota, knowing full well that an exclusive feature at this level would cover her entire year's targets in one go. Her eyes sparkled like a kid in a candy store as she literally begged Chow Chow, pleading with her to make sure the boss agreed to the interview. She started jumping around the room like a maniac, promising 3 full-course feasts if Qiaoqiao helped her land this thing. The morning was absolutely buzzing, crowds thick enough to choke a stampede, and every single person had one of those visual game creatures out. Xiang saw that and his brain lit up like a pinball machine. Just as he had expected, the whole projection thing was pure cool factor glue making players stick like crazy. Then that signature smirk slid onto his face because he realized every one of those commuters was a walking, talking billboard that cost him absolutely nothing. He let out this maniacal, snake-like laugh, thinking how his little scheme to have employees promote the game on their commutes was already paying off big time. And so he strutted into the massive office building, only to get yanked up short by a surprise. There was actually a receptionist at the front desk already. He couldn't help but marvel at Dandan's freakish efficiency. The receptionist's name was Xiaomi. She gave him the standard once-over, had zero clue this was Chen Yang, and asked him to flash an employee ID. Xiang's face went full error. Employee ID? He was the damn founder. She calmly informed him that only ID badge-wielding employees were allowed to waltz in and out of Chenyang Tech Building. He stood there, genuinely bewildered, trying to process the cosmic joke that he needed proof to enter his own company. His brain was just screaming about the absurdity, so he tried to just walk in anyway, but Xiaomi reached out and physically blocked him, her hand stopping him while she warned that no appointment or badge meant absolutely no entry. Xiang was starting to get a little pissed off. His CEO ego was deflating faster than a punctured balloon. Right as the tension was about to curdle, Guo Chao Chao materialized out of nowhere, spotted him, and called out President Chen with total confusion about why he was just standing at the entrance like a lost tourist. Relief washed over Xiang instantly, and he basically begged Guo to do the honors of introducing exactly who he was. Guo turned to Xiaomi and dropped the bomb. This is the company's big boss, President Chen Yang. Xiaomi's soul left her body for a second, and she bent down so fast it looked like a full-body apology maneuver, stammering out a flurry of mortified sorries. She was a hot mess of embarrassment, practically vibrating with panic, but Chen just strolled over and shut it down, telling her there was zero need to apologize because she'd simply been doing her job. Then he disappeared into his office, leaving Xiaomi to turn to Sister Guo and whisper whether blocking the boss on day one was a guaranteed pink slip. Guo just smiled and reassured her that President Chen was absurdly nice and wouldn't hold a grudge. Meanwhile, as they walked, Dandan sidled up to Xiang with that sly look and mentioned she'd heard the front desk had just blocked him outside. Xiang tried to play it off as a minor accident, but he immediately asked her to make him an employee ID just to be safe. Without missing a beat, Dandan pulled out his ID with this infuriating smirk, announcing she'd made it ages ago, and that someone simply never bothered to ask for it. She was full-on laughing now, and Xiang caught on, accusing her of just waiting this whole time to humiliate him. Dandan fired back, asking who told certain big-shot bosses not to give a single damn about their own company. He shot back that he did care, why else would he be there demanding an update? Dandan purred that he'd come to the right place and shoved a report in his face, revealing that their Day 2 retention data was already blowing past 90%. Xiang's eyes nearly popped out of his skull, and he shouted 90% like he just won the lottery. She confirmed it, saying that over the last 2 days, basically nobody who tried their game had bailed. Then she got real intense and called it an unprecedented miracle in gaming history, even touching his chin, which made him all flustered and embarrassed. He tried to pump the brakes, asking her to calm the hell down and talk slowly. But her eyes were on fire, and she practically roared that facing a god-tier number like that made calm physically impossible. He tried to be the voice of reason, pointing out that you can't just drool over retention without looking at total player count. She snapped at him for being such a colossal buzzkill and demanded to know why he couldn't show a shred of excitement. He turned his face away and insisted on hearing the total number first. Dandan dropped the bombshell that total downloads had already ripped past 5 million that morning, and they were on track to smash 10 million by nightfall. The numbers were so ground-shaking that Xiang got immediately suspicious, wondering if their servers could survive a growth spurt that violent. With a smug, pride-drenched look, she told him not to sweat it because she'd already pre-ordered new servers that were getting merged into the cluster that very afternoon. Xiang cheered her for that, and she added that it was a damn good thing their game's algorithms were solved. Any other title would have had its servers detonate multiple times by now. He acknowledged that she'd been through absolute hell keeping everything stitched together, which made her laugh. He asked what the hell was so funny, and she brought up that fruit-named phone company that had blatantly tried to squeeze benefits out of them a few days back. He perked up, asking if those clowns had actually reached out, and she confirmed they'd taken the initiative to call today. He immediately wanted to know how she'd responded. She told him she hadn't responded at all. She was letting them marinate in their own desperation. With a terrifying face, she snarled that now the game was on fire. They wanted to come crawling back as if it were that simple. Xiang gave her a light knock on the forehead and called her petty, warning her that a little revenge was fine but not to let it screw up real business. She just smirked and told him to relax. She knew exactly where to draw the damn line. A hulking man is planted in this massive corporate fortress, glued to his screen, and he's already roasting some small-time dev in his head. He's wondering why Luoyang Tech is still ghosting him, and convinces himself they just want to leech a few 100 million clicks off the Apple brand, because apparently, the game's name alone is enough to make anyone addicted. He clicks on something about an unknown world, and the newsfeed absolutely detonates with hype. Every headline screams that Unknown World is an era-defining masterpiece and so stupidly fun you can't stop playing, which makes our guy mutter in total disbelief that something like that could even be real. Then, out of nowhere, a voice shreds the entire office air. It's Joe Shutao from planning, screeching for Yang Peng to haul his giant ass over there right now. Joe is already bent down, practically drooling over some virtual creature from Unknown World, asking with that obnoxiously curious tone if this is some slick new company product. Peng shuffles over looking absolutely clueless, and you can practically smell the disaster brewing. Joe immediately realizes Peng has zero clue what this thing even is, and the man just loses his entire mind on the spot. He scoffs that he actually thought Peng was reliable and diligent, but clearly he was blind as hell, then shoves his phone right into Peng's face. He demands Peng look at the breakout phenomenon-level game that blew up yesterday, his voice soaked in disbelief and rage. He barks that the virtual fortress right there is running on the game's holographic projection tech, and Peng just gets absolutely shattered by the reveal. Then Joe thunders that this game has launched on every single major platform except theirs, and you can't even find the damn thing in their own store search. He's screaming, demanding to know what the actual hell is going on. Peng, trying to sound like a calm, reasonable employee, stutters out that app reviews take time. He insists that not finding it in the search right now is perfectly normal procedure, like he's reciting some corporate lullaby. Joe's face is practically on fire with fury, veins popping like he's about to evolve into a final boss. He asks how long Peng plans to keep shoveling out excuses. He reveals they've got the entire chat log, and it proves Peng deliberately sabotaged the review just to delay the game's launch. With a terrifying, soul-scorching glare, Joe spits that as a reviewer, Peng didn't even let the game he reviewed go online. He adds that the greenlit numbers on the downloader chart are already in the hundreds of millions, yet their store can't pull up this game at all. He demands to know if Peng has any goddamn idea how many users they're hemorrhaging because of that catastrophic screw-up. Joe announces they've confirmed gross dereliction of duty and Peng is fired on the spot, his career a smoldering crater. And just to twist the knife deeper, he reveals that taking bribes from partners has been flagged as criminal bribery and the company will officially press charges. Peng just crumbles like a stale cookie, sinking into his chair with absolutely no life left in his eyes. He sits there in a hollow daze, asking himself why the universe has chosen violence. He keeps thinking that it was all just standard practice, so how the hell did it turn into this colossal, career-ending dumpster fire? Meanwhile, over at a mobile store, a consultant greets Siang and asks which phone model he's interested in. Siang, with the casualness of someone ordering extra fries, says he wants low-end, mid-range, and high-end flagships, and he'll take 10 units of each model. The consultant nearly has a stroke on the polished floor but somehow manages to stammer that he'll get everything packed right away. Siang's mind is already racing. He's thinking he's stepping straight into the hardware field, and it's time to let the world's tech learn what customers actually feel. Then he casually glances at the tablets and adds that he'll take that entire pile too, telling them to wrap it all up. The sheer audacity has the consultant scrambling like his life depends on it. Back at his apartment, Siang tries to store everything through his ring, but a small bag comes out along with the products he just bought. He squints at it, genuinely confused, wondering what this ratty burlap pouch is and when he even shoved it into his storage space. Then it slams into his brain. This is the exact pouch he used to stash his gold, and now all the gold inside is just straight up gone. A super creepy doubt slithers into his mind that maybe he's not the only one who can access this freaking storage space. Right then he notices the ring, and a system message pops up without any apology. It announces that the storage space upgrade was successful, having coldly consumed 30 kilos of gold to increase capacity by 30 cubic meters. Siang immediately gets it. The storage space literally absorbs gold to expand, like a hungry little gremlin. He grumbles that needing 30 kilos for 30 cubic meters is kind of a ripoff, but he just shrugs it off. He mutters that gold's not worth much in the wasteland anyway, and he'll just slowly stockpile the shiny stuff. Then he says the word, teleport, and vanishes off to the wasteland like a chaotic phantom. At the wasteland, some worker strolls up to the boss, Siang, and says flat out that everything's been moved. Siang just gives this smooth nod and tells the guy to go catch some rest. Uncle Wei, this curious old-timer, spots a stack of mystery boxes and straight up asks what the hell all that is. And Siang, deadpan, informs him it's phones, cameras, tablets, the whole tech buffet, and says it's all for him. Seung then explains that if you really want your development to flow like butter, you gotta get intimate with the hardware's capabilities first. Wei's eyes practically turn into sparkly anime orbs as he praises the boss for always thinking of every damn thing, like he's just been handed the keys to digital heaven. Then Seung points out that different phone tiers mean performance gaps the size of a canyon, so everyone needs to get their hands dirty and familiar with the devices. Right then, Wei gets this manic glint and asks when the next mission's dropping. Seung, smirking, asks if someone can't sit still. Wei suddenly gets all bashful and stammers out that the R&D team's pulling the fattest salaries in the entire base, and it feels kind of slimy just sitting around doing nothing. Seung wants to know if the whole squad shares that same guilt-ridden vibe. Wei confirms they do, and Seung privately thinks these people are a goddamn unicorn herd of top-tier employees, rare as hell and worth their weight in mutant-proof armor. Wei then notices something off and asks the boss if there's a problem. Seung brushes it off like it's nothing, then pivots and reminds Wei that he'd been told to work on whatever he wanted, freely, and asks if there's any juicy results. Wei puffs up with pride and spills that, starting from raw computer code, they built a security program. Seung's eyes practically catch fire with joy as he asks about the security level, wanting to know if it can guarantee the computer won't get hacked at all. Wei assures him that as long as the programming language itself isn't fundamentally hard, they can lock that digital fortress down tighter than a miser's wallet. Then Wei practically drags the boss over to this employee, Xiaoxin, who's glued to a computer screen, and announces that Xiaoxin cooked up something fun too. Xiaoxin immediately turns a shade of embarrassed crimson. Seung, sensing gold, says if Uncle Wei calls it fun, it's gotta be absolute fire, and asks if he can snag a copy. Xiaoxin starts explaining that he discovered this built-in photo editing app where one touch makes a picture look nothing like the real human, so he created a restoration app. Seung, now fully intrigued, asks for confirmation. A tool that can yeet an edited photo right back to its ugly original? Xiaoxin, practically vibrating with excitement, says yep, no matter how heavily the final image is photoshopped to hell, it instantly snaps back to the real deal. Then Xiaoxin throws up an example. A pink-haired fantasy girl gets reverted into this unfortunate soul with a wrecked nose and lopsided bone structure, and Seung physically recoils in horror. He mentally notes that these wasteland folks have absolutely lost their minds and plunged into the deep end of crazy. Xiaoxin, seeing the boss's horrified expression, starts crying and asks if the app is just useless trash. Seung, doing damage control, reassures him that no, it's genuinely brilliant because people deserve to see nice, honest, before and after carnage. With a completely straight, smiling face, he then asks for the source code to be copied immediately. Xiaoxin sniffles and agrees right away. Seung's inner monologue is basically a prayer of gratitude that this abomination lives in the wasteland, because if it ever dropped in his world, the online mobs would roast him into a fine ash. Right then, Li Lo strides in and announces that the doctor has arrived. Li then introduces the man to Chen Yang as Jen Yen from the Doctors Association, Dr. He. The guy formally introduces himself as He Jianyin, a B-rank doctor with the association, and says it's a straight-up pleasure to finally meet Boss Chen. Xiang introduces himself simply as Chen Yang and gives credit where it's due, admitting that building Xuandu Sector D in record time was largely thanks to Dr. He's technical wizardry. The doctor deflects with a smooth, "You flatter me," and notes their meetings have always been fair trades where both sides get exactly what they need. Chen then invites Dr. He to the reception room for a chat. The doctor agrees without a hitch, and Chen warns him the place is a bit basic, hoping he won't mind. Dr. He, ever the diplomat, says Chen's being too modest, because Xiandu Sector D is already more advanced than 90% of the way stations out there. Chen cuts to the chase and asks what suddenly prompted this face-to-face meeting. Before getting down to business, the doctor announces he's brought a little gift. He flips open that briefcase like a Bond villain and reveals a carbon fiber bio-armor suit that's not only insanely defensive, but also flexible enough to hug any body type perfectly. The thing gleams bright gold with black accents, looking like a billionaire's apocalyptic wet dream. He adds that it can neutralize attacks from a Tier 9 enhanced human, and as long as you don't stumble into evolvers or idle mutant strains, it guarantees the wearer's safety. Both Li Lu and Chen gawk at it. Jianin says flat out that from this moment forward, it belongs to Chen. Li immediately asks why the hell he wouldn't trade it to her directly before. Chen, now catching the scent of a hustle, asks if the doctor was originally planning to charge a sky-high price for it. The doctor, with a cunning expression that could sell sand to a desert dweller, says Chen thinks things through well. He mentions that the vegetables Chen supplies are top quality and fresh, so the association holds him in extremely high regard. Jianin then pushes the armor across the table and says it represents his personal goodwill and sincerity. He hopes they can deepen their cooperation, and Chen, looking at that golden masterpiece, says refusing would be straight up rude. Xiang's internal bullshit detector immediately flared up, and he went full interrogation mode, thinking, let's see what the hell you're you're really after." He threw the doctor a look and demanded to know what exactly deeper cooperation was supposed to mean. The doctor didn't even pretend to dance around it, straight up confessing that personally, he wanted to forge an actual alliance with Grey Rat Sector D. Xiang had to point out the glaring absurdity, reminding him that the Doctors Association was already one of the Wasteland's heavyweight champs, so why on earth would they shackle themselves to a microscopic settlement like theirs? Without missing a beat, the doctor fired back that the association was drowning in resources, and none of the doctors were hurting for supplies either, which meant that if he wanted to chase his own twisted research, he needed to latch onto a faction with obscene surplus, and Grey Rat Sector D, small as it was, had its own filthy advantages. He leaned in, practically salivating, detailing that they had ample food reserves and, get this, honest-to-God fresh vegetables. Then the guy fixed them with this intense, predatory glare and stated that this level of freshness was something freezing tech could never fake, which obviously screamed that they'd cracked the code on growing those greens. Xiang, still skeptical, asked if that was the whole reason the doctor chose Sector D. But the doctor's eyes got all prying and sly as he shook his head, revealing that nah, the real juicy reason was Xiang himself. The doctor purred on, saying he knew the wasteland around Grey Rat Town better than his own wrinkled hands, and a tiny shithole like Sector D could never master advanced vegetable cultivation solo. So those suspiciously perfect vegetables Li Leroux traded were almost certainly supplied by Xiang, and that little deduction made Leroux's stomach hit the floor because goddamn the creep had pieced it all together. Realizing the bastard had already seen through the curtain, the doctor, not done shattering nerves, admitted he didn't know what dark magic Xiang was using to prop the place up, but it was dead obvious Xiang was far from ordinary. He methodically pointed out that Xiang had guaranteed the base was swimming in food yet had never once sent a single body for manpower support. That led him to a delicious theory. Maybe it wasn't that Xiang didn't want to send people. He simply couldn't. Inside Xiang's skull, the alarm bells were screaming bloody murder, because this psycho knew way too much. Lilu reminded him the doctor was a Tier 9 enhanced monster. Xiang further calculated that if it really came to fists and fury, he might be able to end things, but not without eating catastrophic damage himself, and every other poor soul in that room would be turned into meat confetti, which instantly turned Xiang's fear into red-hot, barely leashed hostility. The doctor, smooth as a freshly oiled scalpel, addressed him as Boss Chen and insisted there was absolutely zero need for the murder face. He swore he bore no ill will towards Xiang, the little assistant, or anyone present, but he couldn't guarantee the next so-called friend who waltzed in to help would be quite so harmless. Xiang's eyes were spitting actual fire as he growled, asking if that was a threat. The doctor just smiled like a cat digesting a canary and cooed that no, he was merely displaying his sincerity in the creepiest way possible. Xiang snapped back that a deal which only buttered the doctor's own bread didn't exactly scream a strong partnership. The doctor, immediately slapping on his most benevolent grandpa face, asked why he'd ever shortchange Boss Chen. He explained that if Sector D wanted to keep evolving instead of stagnating in the dirt, they'd need a metronome-steady supply of potions, and he could be their goddamn fountain. Xiang's ears perked up as he asked if this meant the doctor would officially become Sector D's exclusive physician. The doctor, stroking his chin like a B-movie villain finalizing a monologue, confirmed exactly that, promising he'd be ecstatic to cook up whatever potions they needed, precisely when they needed them. That arrangement would mean they could stop risking their necks on dangerous trade runs and dramatically slash the chance of getting exposed. Xiang's brain went into rapid calculation mode, and he had to admit the cunning bastard was right. The demand for evolution serum was going to explode like a rad roach in a microwave, and this unholy alliance would lock in a permanent pool of Tier 9 combat power, so he squared his shoulders and told the doctor he agreed to the whole damned alliance. On behalf of Grey Rat Sector D, he officially welcomed their new terrifying chief physician aboard with a voice that tried very hard not to shake. They clasped hands, the deal was sealed in sweat and mutual distrust, and they both rose to their feet,